Do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. Let's go. All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know that we are also over on Rumble and X as well. Of course, a lot of you are here on YouTube. And welcome back, guys. Well, the past 48 hours have been rather interesting. We have so much to get into tonight, ladies and gents. I think Donald Trump and his administration, I really do think they have lost their minds. No other way to put it than that. And that's why tonight's theme is hell to the no. Just that, just hell to the no. Hell no to the no. So much to get into tonight, ladies and gents. Let's go ahead and say hello to people in the chat. Hope you guys are doing well. What is going on too? Brian says empires are not for the benefit of those who live within them, but rather the leeches that feed off of them. Oh, such a good point there, Brian. Shout out to the Capitol says first. Greetings, Maritza says hi with love. Shout out to Megan. Who are the 6% that think taxpayers should pay for this ballroom? I don't know, Megan, but if you haven't done so, please answer that poll question. I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. If you want your taxpayer dollars going towards Donald Trump's ballroom, which is basically a bunker, a military bunker. We'll get into all of that. Greetings. HH says free America from APAC. You know what? You are right with me, HH. Shout out to Blockbuster says hi. Shout out to Sweet Sensation says do better when you're trying to lie to America. America is exhausted from this criminal regime. Resign or be impeached. ASAP 25th Amendment equals president. Article 2, Section 4 equals rest of criminal regime. ASAP. Yeah, I think people have had it with Trump. Greetings user says his children and wife got billions, so they should pay. We even cannot make it from month to month. And we're going to talk about that as well. That new poll that was released about how Americans are actually doing in this economic situation that we have today. Greetings, Measured Man says they are doing way too much. Yes, they are. Shout out to Circa says, hello, lovely people. What is going on? Aham says Press TV is Iranian and live. Yes, Press. I think we have a clip from Press TV tonight. Greetings, Cleopatra says it's not just the ballroom. Oh, the ballroom that's being built. There's a bunker city being built underneath to connect to the mountain, maybe even Camp David too, etc. So the ballroom elitists can fund it. Yeah, I see you guys are already, you know what's going on. You know what's going on. Shout out to Steinbar says Secret Service doesn't know what they're doing. Yeah, interesting how that keeps happening, isn't it? Shout out to Rich says the UAE leaving OPEC. Yes, they are. The UAE will hope to have guaranteed engagement militarily and politically and will protect them. History has proven that the US and Israel will thoroughly disappoint. Shout out to Randy says, I'll be patiently waiting, my dear Sabby Sabs. Good evening, revolutionary comrades. Shout out to Anthony says, good evening. Welcome. Greetings, little goddess says, shooby dooby. Glad to be here too. Shout out to Little Wisdom said, well, this should be a lovely dinner time conversation. It should be. Greetings, Hannah says, Sabby. Shout out to Myra says, hi, everyone. Greetings, Sammy says, hi to Myra. Myra, you got some company here. Greetings, Jerry. No tax dollars should be used for anything that Trump wants to do because it's all going to Israel in one way or another. You guys are so smart. So smart. Greetings, Lorez says, hi, Sabby, Eric, Corey, and RBN fam. Sab, you happy with the Pats draft? Voted hell no. LOL. The ones voting yes, got to be trolls. Hope everyone had a great weekend. I don't really start to pay attention to like who we drafted until we get out of like the NBA playoffs. That's more so when I start to pay attention. But I'll be checking it out. That's for sure. Greetings, Mark Pusley says, Sabby, welcome everyone. And of course, shout out to Real Raw Milk. The U.S. Senate voted in favor of blocking a resolution that would prevent Trump from launching military action against Cuba without congressional approval, with the measure failing 51-47. Well, yeah, we got some ops in Congress. And what's up, Joe? Joe says, finally, I caught you the live. Welcome. Welcome. And let's go ahead and dive in, shall we? Let's go ahead and dive in. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. We have the ultimate, the Sabinators. There's Sabsters. Don't forget about Sabbies. They're kind of cool too. And we also have a group called members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the ticker there throughout the stream. I also want to give a what's up to new Sabby patrons. We like to call them newbies. Let's give it up for Carmela and Judith. Welcome and thank you all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have such an interesting show tonight. We're going to try to laugh our way through some of this because honestly, at some point, you just have to laugh at all of this. Like, otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I'm kind of at that point where I just can't I can't yell anymore. I can't scream about this stuff anymore. Like, I just have to laugh because I feel like I'm just going to pull my hair out. I really do. And that's why tonight's theme is called Hell to the No. So let's go ahead and see what we are going to discuss tonight. Crazy times that we are living in. Welcome to America. Tonight, we are discussing, things are getting really crazy in the Middle East. We got to get into this one. Iran just met with Vladimir Putin in person in Russia. I believe this is the first time that the Iranian foreign minister has went to Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin. It's a lot of things going on, ladies and gents. And I'm telling you right now, Vladimir Putin says he has Iran's back. And this is very important because we told you guys that if this doesn't end, that it could escalate to this point. And I'm going to tell you, other people may not tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this. The United States cannot beat Russia. Just hands down. You already see we can't beat Iran, which we warned you guys about that as well. And it's not looking good for Donald Trump. To go along with that, The UAE has announced that they are leaving OPEC, and I'm going to tell you why that's a blow to Saudi Arabia. Things are changing. These countries, it seems as though they're making moves to start to look out for themselves because of course, this war with Iran that has not been settled at this point in time. Donald Trump is crashing out. He's looking like a fool to the American people. And I don't know how many lies are going to be able to protect him from this. So we're going to get into the latest updates about that. We're also going to discuss, yes, that's Lindsey Graham there in the top square. It's been a while since I think I covered him on this show. But Lindsey Graham, Lindsey Graham wants you to use your taxpayer money for this ballroom. We're going to get into this ballroom and what it really is, what they really want to create, and also the censorship that they're trying to usher in as a result, of course, of the shooting that just happened, this false flag that they have going on here. We're going to get into all of that. A lot of people are not happy with Lindsey Graham. We're also going to discuss Hakeem Jeffries has gone on record to announce that impeaching Donald Trump is not a priority. Dun, dun, dun. That's right. That's why I said sometimes you got to laugh about this stuff. Otherwise, you'll just end up pulling your hair out. We're going to get into why Hakeem is saying this. And honestly, again, this just reiterates my point that, yes, Hakeem Jeffries should be removed from office. Somebody needs to come in and unseat him. There is someone running against him. His name is Vance Bostic. He came onto the show before. I'll try to bring him back on again, but Hakeem has to go. And there are too many politicians in the Democratic Party in Congress that are trying to protect Hakeem. They really want him to be speaker. And I'm going to tell you guys now, if Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker of the House, it will be harder for him to lose his seat in Congress once that happens. And that's why I say he has to leave now. We're also going to discuss, there is a new interview that just happened with 60 Minutes of Australia about Zorro Ranch. And there is something that they revealed in this one that is kind of breaking news. I don't think a lot of people have heard about this yet, but it's not just about the girls. It's not just about the girls. We're going to tell you what else happened at Zorro Ranch. So people need to hear about this. And last but not least, a new poll is revealing that 70% of Americans are barely making ends meet. You'll see that picture there of Elon Musk, because I'm going to try to prove a point. Because the billionaire class, they're continuing to get richer and richer and richer, and we are struggling. And so Elon Musk is one example, but he's not the only one that I'm going to point to. So we got to talk about the fact that we're not being helped here. We're not. And that's why I say hell to the no. Hell to the no. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? If you have not done so, please do me a solid and smash that like button. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. Let's go ahead and get into the first story, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this. I don't like to be the whole I told you so thing. So I'm not going to say that, but I am going to say this. When Democrat politicians tried to make the case and the excuse for Hakeem Jeffries, when they tried to tell Shi Osei that he should not run against Hakeem Jeffries after he had already announced, when DSA came forward and said, no, don't run against him, I told you guys that this is not going to be a good sign. Because Hakeem Jeffries is establishment and corporate to the T. Hakeem Jeffries is also very corrupt. And what he just announced just proves my point that he's a talker, but he's not a doer. He is trying to do his best, not really to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I think you're going to see that here. First and foremost, when I say Hakeem Jeffries is a talker, let me show you what he's saying right now, right? So he got some pushback because he said something about maximum warfare against the Republicans. And so he said he stands by that. Listen to what he says here. Like I said, a talker.
As it relates to anything that has been said, certainly as it relates to the comment related to maximum warfare everywhere, all the time, in connection with the redistricting battle that Republicans launched. I stand by it. You can continue to criticize me for it. I don't give a damn about your criticism.
So people will hear Hakeem Jeffries say something like this, and they will feel as though he is fighting for us. He said he doesn't care what the Republicans say about his statements. He doesn't give a damn. But this is all talk. This is not action. I want to show you another one because he's good at doing this, especially when it's against the Republican Party. I want to show you what he said about this so-called 2-week ceasefire. Listen to this.
A 2-week ceasefire is not sufficient. We need a permanent end to Donald Trump's costly and reckless war of choice. And House Democrats are committed to bringing about that outcome.
So if you listen to this, in theory, this sounds good. It's Hakeem Jeffries saying we need to put an end to this costly war, right? Okay. But when it comes time to vote, just think about some of the actions that Hakeem Jeffries took. The first time when they were urged to push that war powers resolution, Hakeem Jeffries decided not to bring it to the floor for a vote and said, we're going into recess for the weekend. The U.S. and Israel struck Iran that weekend. They knew that was going to happen. They knew it was going to happen, right? As much as Hakeem Jeffries says that Donald Trump is an immense threat and a danger to America, why is Hakeem Jeffries now saying that impeachment is not a priority? This is what he said just recently. I'm going to show you in just a second. And this is important because Democrats are on path to win back the House in November. That it certainly looks that way, unless something crazy happens. It looks like they're on path to win back the House. Hakeem Jeffries is the front runner for Speaker of the House. If people want to bring forward articles of impeachment, he's the one that can say, okay, yes, we'll bring this to the floor for a vote. Or he can say, we're not going to bring it to the floor for a vote. So it matters when Hakeem Jeffries says that it's not a priority. And I want to show you this here. MS Now was talking about this earlier. Listen to this.
In a time when people are sick of political divisions, but also polls show Americans fed up with the way the country is being run right now, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was asked this directly. If Democrats take back control of the House, is impeaching President Trump his top priority?
Of course not. And I've made clear from the very beginning that our top priority is going to be to drive down the high cost of living. We believe in this country, you work hard, you play by the rules, you should be able to live an affordable life, a comfortable life, in fact, to live the good life. We should be focused on actually doing the type of things necessary to ensure that people in this country can not simply survive, but they can thrive.
So here's the problem. He can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Driving down the cost of living, affordability as they refer to it, when in actuality it's wealth inequality, but you know. He can do that and also move forward with articles of impeachment. Both of those can be a priority. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And the problem that I have is that when people interview Hakeem Jeffries, he's gone on a couple of podcasts, but not many. When they interview him, they don't really push back on him. And I say this, and people are like, why are you picking on him? Because he has given a lot of people the impression that he's a fighter against Donald Trump and Donald Trump's policies, but that's all talk. As much as he tweets, as much as he criticizes Trump on Twitter, as much as he criticizes Donald Trump in these interviews, why would impeachment not be a priority? This is what I said before about when Democrats get in power and they do have a majority They do not get on the offense. They choose to just let time just slide by, and then they wait until something bad happens, and then they say, well, you got to elect more of us so that we can fix this. And then they get elected and they don't fix it. Perfect example. After Biden won the presidency, why didn't he re-implement the Iran nuclear deal? Why didn't he fix that? Something that Trump moved away from. Why didn't he do that? Because he supports a war with Iran too. That was revealed recently by someone that worked a part of his administration in a Face the Nation interview where he said Biden was ready to go to war with Iran as well. Trump's an asshole. Trump's ridiculous. But the Democrats don't use power when they have it. They don't use power to prevent these types of things happening. So this whole idea that you only have to prioritize one thing and not two things at the same time, that's just ridiculous. Now, let me answer the question. Why isn't it a priority? Because it's not just because of affordability. People have been struggling economically for years. We were screaming at the rooftops when Biden was president during the pandemic that people needed help. And the child tax credit was cut short. So this whole affordability thing is not new. But that's what they're told to message. They're told this is the message that we have to deliver for the voters. He's not concerned about trying to impeach Donald Trump. You know why? They have similar donors. Both of them get donations from AIPAC. We'll get to his amount in just a second. Both of them. Both of them are pro-Israel. Both of them support Israel's agenda. Now, Hakeem Jeffries is saying Donald Trump didn't follow the right protocol for the Iran war, which is true. Now he comes across as this guy that's like, oh, I'm against this war in Iran. Did Hakeem Jeffries say anything about the girls that were killed at the school in Iran? Did he say anything? Did Hakeem Jeffries say anything about the genocide that started in Gaza under Biden's presidency? No. He went on to say things like Israel is the sixth borough of New York. Let's go on. I want you to hear what this guest says. She thinks this is a good idea. Listen to this.
That was on Fox News, but arguably the real target of that message was a more specific audience, Democrats running for Congress. Joining me now, Tara Setmayer, former GOP communications director and co-founder and CEO of the Seneca Project. Always good to see you. I mean, can you actually envision a contested district where arguing for the impeachment of Donald Trump is likely to really help you win?
Well, no. And I'm glad that Hakeem Jeffries didn't fall into that trap on Fox News being asked about that. I mean, of course, there's a lot of Americans, just look at the polling, who are very frustrated with the failure of Donald Trump's presidency. And so Hakeem Jeffries was smart to turn it around and say, no, that's not our priority. Our priority is the American people and the cost of living crisis and affordability and the ability to feel safe. That's the type of messaging that the Democrats need to have in these districts, because yes, does Donald Trump deserve to be impeached? Absolutely. But we all have been through this process, unfortunately, multiple times where impeachment is one thing, but they couldn't get the conviction in the Senate to remove him. So
to her point, what she just said there, why didn't Hakeem Jeffries say, well, yes, I will prioritize impeachment along with affordability, but we also have to get it to pass in the Senate? Why didn't he say something like that? I don't consider that question to be a trap. And yeah, there are traps that are set up on both sides, but I don't consider that to be a trap. Right now, you had thousands of people out in the streets saying they wanted him gone. You get me? Now, do I think the No Kings protests were powerful enough? No, they don't say anything about the genocide. They were like pro NATO, like pro war. No, I don't think it was great. I don't think it went as far as it needed to. But thousands of people came out in the street to send one message, which was that they don't want Donald Trump. But according to her, it's just like, because here's the thing. Democrats went back to the House. Okay. Donald Trump is still president. So the affordability policies that they may try to pass, guess what? That also has to pass in the Senate, just like impeachment. You see how they say these things and they don't even put like two and two together before they make these statements? Anything that passes in the House also has to pass in the Senate. You have Democrat senators right now sitting in the Senate that are actively helping Donald Trump's agenda pass. Chuck Schumer, John Fetterman, Chris Coons. Of course, the Republicans are going to support him, but I'm talking about there are Democrat senators that are allowing Donald Trump's his legislation to get through, to let him do what he wants to do. Let's continue.
Unless the Democrats win both the House and the Senate, and there's enough appetite to remove him, impeachment is unfortunately a moot process at this point. But what you do is you turn this around and you use the Republicans' own messaging against them. Go on offense. Donald Trump promised that he would lower prices. He's betrayed you. Donald Trump promised there'd be no forever wars. He's betrayed you. MAGA Republicans have gone along with this betrayal. Do you still want these people in office and in charge with all of this corruption, chaos, and kookery coming out of Washington at the hands of Donald Trump and Republicans? Democrats are the adults in the room. Democrats are the ones who are going to fight for you. Democrats are the ones who are going to turn this around and focus on the American people, not an administration that's obsessed with foreign wars, obsessed with enriching themselves and not taking care of the American people because they've betrayed you for Donald Trump's own interests.
Both parties are obsessed with foreign wars. It's not just one party that's obsessed with foreign war. You know, it's just, this is how these people get to be on MS Now and Fox News, because they only call out one side. And all the people that have sat there and they've interviewed Hakeem Jeffries, they never push him on this. They don't push him on the money that he takes from AIPAC. They don't push him on being pro corporations, pro billionaire class, pro establishment. They don't push him on blocking certain bills, certain legislation to come to the floor for a vote that could actually go against Donald Trump's agenda. They don't do it because they want access. And that's the other sad part about this. It's not just corporate media. Independent media is doing it too. When they interview these politicians, they're so happy to get the interview. They don't really want to press them on the issues that they need to press them on. How is that any different from corporate media? We'll go on a little bit more here, and then I want to show you something else.
That's the messaging.
I wonder if, alternatively, Trump is messaging effectively, at least to motivate his base, when he says, if you vote Democrats into the majority in the fall, they will impeach me.
Yes, that's going to appeal to some people because Donald Trump is a perpetual victim. He's been using that for years now, that the other is coming for me and I'm representing you. But what we're seeing that's different this time around is there are fault lines inside his base and in MAGA because he has betrayed them on all of his policy prescriptions. The farmers, the small business owners, the labor union folks, all these people who voted for Donald Trump because they believed him that he was their champion, they're the ones paying the price. They're the ones paying $4 a gallon or $6 a gallon for diesel if you're a truck driver. They're the ones who are losing their rural hospitals because of Donald Trump's big betrayal bill that cut Medicaid costs. They're the ones who are losing their family farms because of Donald Trump and his reckless tariffs, what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, and what's happened with cutting off programs where farmers are reliant on those for their crops.
Doesn't that just make the case for impeachment? I mean, she's basically preaching to the choir, which is why Hakeem Jeffries should support it, but he doesn't. He said it's not a priority, guys. And I'm over here sometimes I'm wondering, am I losing it? Because I'm over here like hell to the no. Because if it were the other way around, the Republicans would support it. If it were the other way around and it was a different Democrat in the White House and he was doing these things, the Republicans would proactively say, yes, call for impeachment. The Democratic Party sits on their hands and then they wonder. They wonder why things happen the way that they do. I'm here to warn you right now. If Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker of the House, he will eventually turn into this guy right here, Jim Clyburn. Listen to what Jim Clyburn just said.
Protests over the past year, the No Kings rallies.
Yeah.
Are Democrats doing enough, in your view, to protest?
I don't think the American people are doing enough.
Whoa, it's not the politician, it's us. According to Jim Clyburn, we're the ones that are not doing enough. You see how they put the blame back on us? I kid you not.
Are Democrats doing enough, in your view, to protest?
I don't think the American people are doing enough. I'm not going to allow this to be a Democrat versus Republican thing. That is not partisan politics. That is what we, as Americans, ought to be about. And do we follow through enough? And I don't know that you can really know that until the final verdict is in, and that won't happen until November.
Clyburn is not the only candidate this year for whom age is an issue. There are a dozen members of Congress who are 80 plus and seeking re-election.
What keeps you going at 85 years old?
Donors, the donor class, and money. So this is the warning I'm sending to everyone right now. If Hakeem Jeffries becomes Speaker of the House, it will be harder to unseat him once he is Speaker of the House. You see how people went against Chi Osei when he announced that he was going to run against Hakeem Jeffries. You see how his own organization, DSA, said, no, we will not endorse you. And Hakeem's not even Speaker. Imagine someone running against him when he's Speaker. What do you think they're going to say then? Do you think people are going to get behind that candidate and say, yes, we support you? No. This whole idea, and this is my problem with the Democratic Party, this whole idea that you want to be this opposition party, which I don't think they do, but you say you want to be this opposition party, but you have people in the party that are in positions of leadership that are holding you back. Hakeem Jeffries is one of them. Chuck Schumer is another one. These people need to go. And I don't like this whole idea of you shouldn't support the candidates that are taking money from the pro-Israel lobby, except if it's Hakeem Jeffries, he gets a pass. And why does he get a pass? You can't have it both ways. Hakeem Jeffries is one of the people I got to tell you is not a fighter. He's a talker, not a fighter. If he were in the NFL and he were a running back, he is not the one you want to give the ball to if there's 15 seconds left in the game and you're in the red zone. 9 times out of 10, he's going to fumble the ball. If he were a quarterback, you don't want to give him the ball in the last 15 seconds either if you need to win that game, because 9 times out of 10, he's going to take a knee. He's going to be conservative about it. He's not going to try to go for that touchdown to win the game. You get me? He's not the wrestler that jumps off the tightrope to make the grand slam. He is a conservative Democrat. He's the one that is just going to, let me just pipe down a little bit. I don't want to get my suit all messed up. But he can talk. But he wasn't always that way. I'm going to show you a picture of Hakeem. Because, see, I wasn't born yesterday. And I just want to tell you, Hakeem knows. He knows better. Here's a picture. This picture in the middle. This is Hakeem with his family. You see his picture? Right here. Everybody in the family has on dashiki. I want to make a point here because at one point, Hakeem was very, very much in the activist community. He comes from a family of activism. His uncle, very much well known in the Black radical tradition, the pro-Palestinian movement. Hakeem Jeffries has known for years what Israel was doing to the Palestinian people, and yet he took that money from AIPAC anyway. When Hakeem Jeffries was in college, here's a picture of him here, right over here to the right, wearing the dashiki. That's when he was a part of the Black student club. That was Hakeem Jeffries. But something happened, and I'm going to tell you what happened. You know what happened? Hakeem Jeffries was, deciding to become a politician, and he was running against a gentleman by the name of Charles Barron. Charles Barron was a member of the Black Panther Party, also pro-Palestinian. Charles Barron at the time was leading in the polls. And so outsiders, donors decided to do something about that. The next thing you know, Charles Barron gets the smear that he's anti-Semitic. Sound familiar? This playbook has been done numerous times. And after that publication was made about Charles Barron, all of a sudden he started to slide down in the polls, and Hakeem Jeffrey increased in the polls. And Hakeem got a lot of money from the pro-Israel lobby, and they basically helped him get in. And that's how Hakeem Jeffries got that seat. Had it not been for that, Charles Barron would have been sitting in that seat. The point is, he's a plant. We were talking a couple of days ago about industry plants in the music business. There's plants in Congress too. The majority are not grassroots. A lot of times they tend to go after people that, especially Black politicians, they tend to go after people that are activists, clean them up, give them a suit, give them a haircut, give them some money, and they mold them into what they want them to be. He's a plant. And they use people like Hakeem because they say, well, he's Black. He's going to get the Black vote. He's going to help get Black voters to come out and support him. They've been known to use Black faces to do this time and time again. Van Jones is another one that came from the activist tradition, put on a suit, got a fancy job, and took the money. And that's how you end up with this. That's how you end up with a politician that has taken over $5.5 million from the pro-Israel lobby. When a politician is taking money from these special interest groups, especially the pro-Israel lobby, that is their number one priority. You don't get $5.5 million from the pro-Israel lobby to actually prioritize affordability. You don't get that kind of money to go against the pro-Israel agenda. You get that kind of money to make Israel your number one priority. And that is Hakeem Jeffries' job. Same thing with the Congressional Black Caucus, all of them. AIPAC made the ad the other day that they are the largest donor for the Congressional Black Caucus. That's why you don't see them actually do anything for the Black community. Their number one priority is Israel. All of them need to go too. All of these people need to be replaced. So much corruption. And it was just astounding to me that you had even progressives say that Hakeem Jeffries should not have a challenger. Astounding. So for Hakeem to say that impeachment is not a priority, you need to push back on that and say hell to the no. It should be a priority. That sends a message to Donald Trump that he can continue to do whatever the hell he wants to do because he knows the Democrats aren't going to stop him. And that's how we get here. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you for the super chat, Union Joe. Happy International Worker Day. Solidarity. What's up? Roger Meadows. Yes, you do, Sabby. You certainly are the I told you so lady. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jabram. We need to strip the Black Congressional Caucus of all power. Yeah, all of them need to be replaced. All of them. Hakeem is the next Clyburn. I'm warning you now. Thank you, Jerry. Barron Trump just made 150 million shorting the oil market while his clown of a father manipulated the oil markets during his illegal Iran war. Barron can pay for the stupid ballroom. I hear you. Thank you, Ira. Did you see the CIA analyst guy, Larry Johnson, say that the military commanders have been refusing Trump's orders to restart the attack on Iran? Is it safe to say that Israel doesn't have as much control as we think? So Larry Johnson, he's been on the show a couple times. Great guest. He knows a lot of this stuff. He's former CIA analyst. Larry said that Washington was a crazy place, but Israel has some control. But Larry Wilkerson will also tell you that Israel isn't doing anything the U.S. government doesn't want it to do. So there you go. Thank you, Marlon. The party flip is not an off ramp for the war. The war, both parties should be for impeachment at this point to avoid escalation and restore sanity to government. Exactly. Thank you, Jabram. No rising unless the Democrats fail, let them fail. Thank you, Jerry. Unless Democrats want to bring MFA and $25 minimum wage to the conversation, I don't want to hear it from them. Sabby, love your blouse, bringing in the spring. I'm trying to. And thank you, Libertarian Social Democrat. I feel like Charlemagne being groomed for Jim's South Carolina seat. I don't even know if he could run in South Carolina anymore because he's not a resident. He's not a resident there anymore. Charlemagne was, I don't know if I told everybody this, but Charlemagne the God used to live next door to my best friend. This is back when I was in undergrad, when I was at the University of South Carolina. And at that time, he was on the radio station. So this goes way, way back, but that was before he moved to New York and joined the Wendy Williams radio show and all that stuff, which led him to where he is now. But I'm not sure that he would even be able to run in South Carolina because he's not a resident there anymore. But yeah, crazy times. All right, ladies and gents, do me a solid if you haven't done so and smash that like button. And let's move on to this ballroom. Okay, so after the shooting incident that happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, they couldn't even wait 1 week before they start saying, this is why we need the ballroom. This is another reason why a lot of people believe it was staged, among other things that I got into. They couldn't wait 1 week. Automatically, we need the ballroom. But there's also something afoot here. They are really going to try, and I told you guys about the censorship. They are really going to try to clamp down here when it comes to censorship. And what they are doing is that they know that left and right have started to come together on the Israel issue. And now even some on the cost of living issue. And so what they're doing is that they're going to try their best to convince conservatives that it's the left. The leftists are the crazy people, and we got to go after them because they're just violent, crazy people. Meanwhile, we have a president that has implemented a hell of a lot of violence, right? So that's what this is all about. Caroline Leavitt right here already sets the stage for it. I'm trying to tell you guys, this is the next move.
As I told many of you on Friday afternoon, I thought that would be my last time taking your questions until after my maternity leave. But given the attempted assassination of the president and, quote, top Trump administration officials, as the depraved shooter noted in his manifesto at the White House Correspondents Association dinner on Saturday evening, I felt it was prudent to be here today to answer your questions and inform the American people about how the administration is responding to yet another attempt on President Trump's life. Saturday was supposed to be a joyful evening, celebrating free speech and the First Amendment with all of you, members of the press. Instead, the night was hijacked by a crazed anti-Trump individual who traveled across the country to assassinate the president and as many administration officials as possible.
Notice the talking points are always the same with all of these events. Crazed individual, or they'll use the word radical, or traveled across the country. It's the same script every time.
This is the third major assassination attempt against President Trump in 2 years. No other president in history has faced such repeated, serious attempts on his life.
Yeah, almost seems like it's too good to be true, doesn't it? Almost seems like it's scripted.
First and foremost, the president, the first lady, and everyone in this White House are extraordinarily grateful to the brave law enforcement professionals who sprang into action to apprehend the would-be assassin and keep all of us safe. The president would especially like to express his gratitude to the men and women of the United States Secret Service who acted with the utmost professionalism, courage, and sense of duty. This includes the heroic agent who took a bullet to the chest. Thankfully, he was saved by his bulletproof vest. Minutes after returning here to the White House to the Oval Office, despite fighting Secret Service to try to stay and keep the dinner going on Saturday, ahead of addressing you here in the briefing room, President Trump was intent on speaking to this brave agent to ensure he was okay. And the agent assured the president that he was.
Because he was in so much danger that they felt, let's try to keep the dinner going and all this other stuff. The funny thing about this now, too, is that now there are claims that the Secret Service agent that was hit may actually have been hit from his own team, not from the shooter. You can't make this up. We go on to see here it comes, I'm telling you, Scott Jennings on CNN. Scott Jennings, who's basically a Salem media puppet. We talked about Salem Media on this show, which should be registered as a foreign agent. You know, just basically like owned by an Israeli and all this stuff. Like we talked about that before. This guy, I told you before, he was an actor and he's just playing a part. He reads right into the same script.
The left is not the only people doing this, and the right does it just as much online.
You can understand why we're on edge as conservatives, though. 3 times the president, Steve Scalise, Brett Kavanaugh, Charlie Kirk. Heck, there was even a plot against Russ Vought the other day, who's the head of the Office of Management and Budget. I mean, conservatives are, I think, rightfully on edge because this keeps happening over and over and over again, and people keep calling Donald Trump a Nazi, and they keep calling him a fascist, and they keep repeating lies about him that are not true, yet they keep getting repeated regarding Epstein and other things. I'm just telling you, as a conservative who lives in this every day, my friend was murdered last year. My president's had 3 assassination attempts. I have a knot in my stomach about it every day that I wake up.
How does he know the claims about Donald Trump and Epstein aren't true? So do you see this? This guy is just an agent, Scott Jennings. He's another one. So this is what they're trying to do. This is the next step. Let us try to divide the left and the right again. I told you guys there's going to be many false flags because that's a way for Donald Trump to, again, try to get the other Republicans that at one point were pro-Israel back on that pro-Israel train. And they'll do so by, well, first they try to do it by convincing you that Iran wants to kill everybody. That didn't work. I guess before that, it was Hamas wants to kill everybody. Then it was Iran wants to kill everybody. Didn't work. Now they're going back to the old standard. The radical left are the ones that want to harm you. So we got to do something about them. You know who they're not pointing their fingers at? You know who Scott Jennings doesn't call out? You know who? Doesn't call out corruption. Doesn't call out billionaires, doesn't call out the wealthy. He doesn't call out those people. And that's something that all of us have in common. And that's the point I've been trying to get across to people. Look at who they tell you the enemy is. So all this violence that apparently, according to them, only comes from the left. And now they're trying to make the way and pave the way for censorship. And I told you guys, they were going to go after these organizations. They're going to go after social media. It happens with both presidencies. The Twitter files were released under the Biden presidency. So when Biden was in office, there was obviously some type of censorship that was happening towards the right. And we saw that. Now, with Trump in office, they want to implement and have censorship towards the left. And if you look at X, you will see the big flip. The moment that Donald Trump won, a lot of the Democrat and left accounts were heavily suppressed. And all of a sudden, a lot of the Trump surrogate accounts that had been removed from Twitter were all of a sudden brought back to Twitter, and they were elevated above and beyond. So both parties do it. They just apply censorship to the opposition. This is what they want. Listen.
When you read the manifesto of this shooter, ask yourselves, how different is the rhetoric from this almost assassin than what you read on social media and hear in various forums every single day? The answer, if you're being honest with yourself, is that there is no difference at all. Much of the manifesto of the would-be assassin is indistinguishable from the words that we hear daily from so many.
And here it comes. What did I tell you? Every time one of these incidents happens, they are going to try to use that as an excuse to implement more censorship, to ramp up more censorship. And they can do it in different ways. Of course, removing people is the most obvious one, but the other one is to just suppress those accounts so much that people don't even see them. And that's been happening a lot on X. A lot on X. Right? But they talk about, this violence as if Donald Trump didn't have violent words. Remember this?
I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care. They've got to be stopped. I'm going to bomb the shit out of them.
But they would sit back and have you believe it only happens on the left. What about when Robert Mueller died? Do you remember what Donald Trump said then? Robert Mueller just died. Good. I'm glad he's dead. He can no longer hurt innocent people. President Donald J. Trump. Wasn't Donald Trump against that type of rhetoric after Charlie Kirk died? I remember. Do you remember? I remember. We get back to this shooter event and you'll see that even his own audience doesn't even believe it. This was from Fox News. Was Trump assassination staged? 70% said yes. April 25th, 70% said yes. That's not a CNN poll. That's a Fox News poll. It's beyond laughery at this point. Laughery. It's beyond it. Nobody's falling for this mess. So here we go with the ballroom. So because of the shooting incident, now they're like, see, we got to have the ballroom.
We don't have a room big enough here at the White House, which is another point to be made. And the president is absolutely right. It's why the White House Ballroom Project is not just a fun project for President Trump, like you will read in the media. It is actually critical for our national security that a larger, secure building on this complex, which is the most secure complex in the world, is built to accommodate not only large amounts of guests, but also the president, the vice president, members of the cabinet. The line of succession in this country should be able to gather freely in safety without the fear of threats or political violence. And the White House Ballroom will provide that. And so it's critical that we get this project done as quickly as possible. We don't have a room big enough here.
How convenient that this shooting happens during the White House Correspondents' Dinner after Donald Trump had pushed for that ballroom prior to that event and was told no. How convenient. See, this is why we need the ballroom. And of course, they always say that this is an issue for national security. Everything's national security. This ballroom, which apparently we're looking at $400 million. It's not even really a ballroom. Sam Parker is on it. The ballroom, And the radical leftism psyops are cover for a Stargate Command. Stargate Command underground data center and Palantir-style mass surveillance state. The ballroom. Trump is building a 90,000 square foot ballroom with a 1,000 person capacity, hardly adequate for a White House Correspondents' Dinner, which was attended by over 2,600 people. But we're told that we need the ballroom in order to host events like that dinner. Cost and location. The cost has ballooned to over 300 to 400 million. We're told it's being privately funded and being sold on that as being a good thing that won't cost the taxpayers. Here's the reality. Private funding means no congressional oversight or appropriations, no budget hearings, no public scrutiny. And even that has changed. I'll get to that in just a second. Furthermore, when infrastructure is part of the executive office of the president at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, it can be classified under executive privilege. The entire executive branch will be able to run this data center without oversight, checks, and balances. Project Stargate. This is the really important part. January 21st, 2025, shortly after the inauguration, Trump stood with Larry Ellison and Sam Altman to announce Project Stargate, two other billionaires, by the way, a $500 billion initiative to build data centers and AI infrastructure. We already talked about those data centers and how much electricity is used for those centers. Circling back to the ballroom, why would it cost 300 million, ballooning upwards to 400 million now? None. But an underground bunker data center would. What kind of underground facility costs that much? Now, for reference, in 2021, Larry Ellison's Oracle built a 150K square foot, 319 million data center for the Israeli military intelligence, several stories underground. The same Larry Ellison of Project Stargate, who said Americans need to get used to total surveillance state. The same Larry Ellison who just bought TikTok to censor anti-Israel content and push pro-Israel messaging. The same Larry Ellison whose son just acquired Paramount, CBS, and Warner Brothers Discovery. Goes on and on. Private donor to the IDF. Close friends with Benjamin Netanyahu. This takes us to the architect. The architect, Shalom Barnes, is a Jewish immigrant to the U.S. via the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. He has been appointed architect. Previously, he was the architect for the post-9/11 hardening and rebuilding of a little building called the Pentagon. SCIF's bomb-proofing, compartmentalization, the whole 9 yards. Barnes has no expertise designing ballrooms. None. So why would he be involved in this? Selling it to the public. This is the important part. Under the guise of a ballroom, they've sought to build this under our noses, but they've undertaken another angle. Radical left-wing terrorism. We just have to do something about the radical left wing. That was the messaging after, what's her name? Irna? After Irna's slaying, the transgender shooting of the Catholic Children's School, and notably the Charlie Kirk assassination. Within minutes to hours, the radical left was being blamed for the killing of Charlie. You will remember the massive PR campaign launched after Charlie's assassination, promoting Palantir-style surveillance to solve the problem of the radical left. And this is the warning that I've been trying to give people. That's what they're going to do. They're going to use the radical left as an excuse as to why we need to increase surveillance. And the people who go along with it won't realize that they're going to be surveilled too. It always starts with one group and then it eventually spreads to others. That's what's going to happen. They want to watch all of us. They don't want us to have any privacy. Edward Snowden tried to warn you. Now, for this latest shooting, they're recommitting this narrative of radical left terrorism and once again using this violent event to promote the ballroom that the military really wants, guys. Remember, the military supports this. We really need this ballroom that will provide protection for new security threats. This account, by the way, Sam Parker is conservative. And even he's showing, look, the radical left thing, this is all a part of their plot to push for this. The president already has a bunker that he can retreat to. Why would he need another one? Well, if we're talking about data and we're talking about, in intelligence, that's why. Senator Rand Paul, unfortunately, is also supporting this. That's right. Senator Rand Paul supports it. The White House just promoted it and says we're demanding a large, safe, and secure ballroom to be built on the grounds of the White House. This event would never have happened with the militarily top secret ballroom. I mean, they're just telling you everything. They're giving it away. Military. Now we run into another issue. Donald Trump, this is what he said about this ballroom earlier on. Listen to what he said, how it would be paid for, and then we're going to get to Lindsey Graham.
But we could use at the White House. It would actually be a beautiful addition. It's going to cost nothing. I'll spend the whole thing myself. We'll do a big, beautiful room, but we could use it at the White House. You know what they do when they...
Let's go back here. Here we go.
We could use at the White House. It would actually be a beautiful addition. It's going to cost nothing. I'll spend the whole thing myself. We'll do a big, beautiful room, but we could use it at the White House. You know what they do when they have a big ceremony to put up a tent? And somehow I think we've outgrown the tent stuff, right? Don't you think?
He said it wouldn't cost anything. He'll do it himself. Eric, let's go to the second part of Type VNC. But that's not what is being said now. It's like these things just always seem to change. Because now Lindsey Graham, he let the cat out the bag. Apparently he wants us to pay for the ballroom. So let's hear what he said first. Now, when he talks about that price change from 300 million to 400 million.
We're going to introduce legislation that would authorize $400 million to be spent to secure to build the presidential ballroom. Underneath, there will be a lot of military stuff. There will be a Secret Service annex.
Giving it away. A lot of military stuff. This is just more military. The ballroom is just a front.
And we've paid for it by offsetting it with custom fees. But the estimate is $332 million. We're going to do $400 million because I think it's probably going to take more. Private donations can be used, but I think they should be used for buying China and stuff like that. Underneath this ballroom,
they should have China, he said,
will be infrastructure that is national security centric. The ballroom itself will avoid the dilemma of having to leave the White House grounds with future presidents and this president's to go downtown in a place that's less secure. President Trump said to me yesterday, we need the ballroom not just for me, but for future presidents. He literally could have left his bedroom, walked out the back of the White House, and been at the ballroom. That's what needs to happen when you have 1,000 or 2,000 people gathered in today's environment. And the sooner we get the ballroom built, the more hardened it is, the better for the country. So I hope and pray that most people in the Senate after Saturday night will support this bill. We're going to introduce.
This is what he said at first, right? They need to have this ballroom for safety for the president of the United States. It's basically just a military operation, guys. That's really what this is. And more intelligence and more data. Data center full of military installations. That's really what they want here. Now, this is where he gets to the part, and this is what pissed a lot of people off, where he said, we're going to pay for it. Us, the taxpayers.
And if we fail, we'll have to go to Plan B. Yeah.
Some of your fellow Republicans have said taxpayers should not have to foot the bill for this ballroom, that the president should be able to raise private money to fund it.
I disagree with them. We're going to vote no. Vote no. Just vote no. This is what I like about voting. If you don't think $400 million of taxpayer money is a good investment to create a secure facility at the White House where the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Cabinet, and people from the public can come and, have a meal and gather without what happened Saturday, then I disagree. This is the number one job of the federal government is national security. The number one job of national security, I think, would be to protect the commander in chief and to have infrastructure under the ballroom that is very national security centric. So I don't think, just vote no. That's all I ask you to do is vote. I don't care how you vote. I want to vote. I want to see where is America on this. I'll bet you 90% of the people would love to have a better facility than the Hilton Hotel to make sure this crap never happens again. I can't tell you what to say on the Senate floor, but I've never seen it like this. There are people out there just one click away from picking up a gun or something else and trying to make America better by killing. You don't make America great by killing people you don't like.
Lindsey Graham must have grew up in a different country than the one that I grew up in. He's older than me. You think Lindsey Graham is from South Carolina. He's older than me. Why is Lindsey Graham pretending as though this hasn't always been a violent country? Because it has. But all of a sudden he wants to pretend like these things never happened. Never, ever, ever. Well, he knows a lot, especially with the history of South Carolina. A lot of violence went down. But he thinks you should pay for it, ladies and gentlemen. Lindsey Graham said the taxpayers should have to pay for this military data center ballroom. But we can't give everybody health care. They'll probably have a couple of Israeli agents operating right underneath the White House. I mean, they already walk into the Pentagon. This country has been captured. This country is being controlled. And I just want you to see how they continue to screw over the working class. Lauren Boebert supports it as well.
Congresswoman, what are your thoughts on some of the discussions about the ballroom and being included in the
I'm working on legislation to ensure that we are getting the ballroom funded. It's obviously a national security element to that, and it needs to be done. I cannot believe that a judge allowed a woman he approved her lawsuit because she walked by with her dog and thought it was ugly.
Is there any better use for taxpayer dollars than a ballroom?
Are you kidding? There's like hardly any money here that is actually going to that. He has got it. He has it funded. We just have to get it approved to get the lawsuit over with.
Is it an issue of like the Congressional Registry of Historic Places? Like what's the authorization process there?
She supports it all the way. Everything is national security. And someone said it already in the chat, right? That Donald Trump goes to these UFC fights. Donald Trump goes to a lot of things, just walks around very freely. But he needs to have this ballroom for security. Check this out. I want you to see what this looks like. This account here, the Constitutionalist, listen to what she said. Not the ballroom, but the urgency for which it should be built should terrify you. The ballroom underneath will house the most advanced secure military bunker complex system in history, to include medical facilities, a hospital, and a biodefense system. It features missile-resistant and blast-proof structures, top-secret military applications to protect from drone swarms, hypersonic threats, and other modern attacks. These details were exposed in the lawsuit. It dwarfs the White House. The ballroom, the opulent shed that sits on top, was halted by court order, not the bunker system. So why the sudden urgency? Rand Paul even flipped the switch. So you can see what this looks like here. This is the White House, the West Wing. Here's the East Colonnade, the neoclassic facade. This is the new East Wing. This is what they're talking about here. 90,000 square foot ballroom. So this is all just military, guys. That's what this is. Palantir, I'm pretty sure, is also a part of this. And honestly, people need to start looking into the spiritual element of this too, right? Notice how quickly Donald Trump is trying to move to please Israel. Notice how quickly he was willing to, let's get into Gaza and let's build this resort. Notice how quickly he started a war with Iran. Notice how quickly they're trying to build this ballroom, right? Palantir. Notice how quickly he backed and supported Larry Ellison to buy all the media. These people are evil. None of these people, I don't care what they tell you, none of these people are Christians. These people are evil. And some would say, there was another picture that someone had up. Some would say that this is not really about a ballroom. This is more about building some type of ritual element here. And that's why I've been trying to tell people, you have to think about the spiritual element too. The quickness that he has moved for all of these things for Israel, trying to ramp up to get things closer to the end times. That's the piece that's missing. A lot of people they're not getting to that part. They're getting to the part about Trump is losing his mind. A lot of people are just like, Trump is losing his mind, he's crazy. But they're not taking that extra step and looking at the spiritual. Why do you think, remember who is it? His spiritual advisor, that crazy woman? Why do you think you keep seeing that woman in the White House? No other president moved to go to war with Iran like this. He did, and did it quickly. So whether you believe in Christianity or whatever, if you look at the religious implications, if you look at what it says about the end times, and you look at the way that Donald Trump is moving, he is trying to move in a direction to bring us closer to the end times. That's the part I think that people are missing. And to all of that, I say hell to the no. And nobody's going to stop him, because the thing is, even the Democrats, they support what Israel wants. They all bought, not all of them, the majority of them in Congress, they bought in. So they know the plan. They've been through the plan. They're just trying to convince you that they're shocked and surprised. But they knew. They know what's up. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you for the super chat. LeBaron says ballroom. Exactly. Yeah. Skylar the writer said Breaking Point said that apparently the alleged shooter may not have even fired a single shot, and that all the shots were from Secret Service. It's really giving psyop. What I tell you, see? Thank you, Cloudness. DEI Epstein regime is burning down everything. Thank you, Marlon. The fact that the assassin is still alive makes fake as hell. How does Secret Service miss this many times a man with multiple weapons? Exactly. Thank you, Marlon. 70% should be registering as independents. Thank you, LeBaron. YouTube will not let you say that the entire leadership of Iran was eliminated, but somehow the Trump administration is worried about political violence. Thank you, Libertarian. Sabby, can you talk about the Sharia-free caucus? I can look into that. Thank you, Vibe. They censor anti-Israel material on TikTok, but anti-Black material is alive and well on TikTok and many other social media platforms. Crazy world. I'm telling you what's happening, what they're trying to set the stage for. Thank you for this one. Libertarian says Alex Karp is a black face in a very high and evil place. Yes, he is. Thank you, Measured Man. Well, at that point, with my tax dollars, I should be able to rent it out. They are trying too hard. The Streisand effect. Thanks, Jerry. Did Lindsey Graham really have the gall to say that you don't make America great by killing people you don't like? Cue the clip of him praising Trump after bombing Iranian school children. Thanks, Marlon. F healthcare, build everybody a bunker. Thank you, More Smoky. These people worship ball. And thank you, Libertarian. Massey is more like Ron Paul's son than Rand Paul. Yeah, I can see that. And thank you, Shockwave. They will sacrifice us all if needed. Yeah, there's a spiritual element to this. And these people are evil, man. These people are evil. All right, ladies and gents, if you haven't had a chance to do so, please smash that like button. And if you're new, please be sure to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. All right, let's get into Iran because things just popped off. Let's go back for just a second. Over the weekend, Donald Trump announced that he was canceling J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff's trip to Islamabad, Pakistan, to reach some type of negotiation with Iran. So he canceled that. And the reason why he canceled it is because Iran was not going to meet them at the table, because every time they do try to sit down and negotiate with them, you know, the U.S. and Israel use that opportunity to wreak havoc on their civilian population. So they said, no, we're not falling for this. We're not going to go and meet with you. So Donald Trump ends up being embarrassed and had to call the whole thing off because J.D. Vance and them would have gone there and nobody would have been there to meet them. So embarrassment number one. However, embarrassment number two, Donald Trump's actions and even starting this war with Iran that he just can't seem to get out of now without being embarrassed yet again, has actually led Iran's foreign minister to go to Russia, and he met with Vladimir Putin in person. And I think it's the first time that he has actually done that, gone to Russia and met with him in person. And I'm here to tell you now, Russia is willing to do what they can to help Iran. And we could be seeing ourselves right now heading closer and closer towards World War III. You can see him getting off the plane here to meet everybody. Yeah, see, Iran has other options. Iran has friends. Yep. They're serious about it. And this is what we said, you know, could possibly happen if Trump doesn't just back off out of all of this. Here's some pictures here that you can see. There is Iran's foreign minister shaking hands there with Vladimir Putin. They are smiling. Remember, like I said, Iran has friends. Just because it's not a part of NATO, just because, you know, the U.S. and Iran don't have this friendly relationship, that doesn't mean they don't have other friends. And the West is very small. The rest of the world is larger than us. Russia, India, the rest of these countries are larger than the West. Now, we're going to get into this part here because I want to show you more from that conversation that they had.
Hello, I'm Anita McVeigh, and this is the Iran War Today, our daily briefing, bringing you up to date with all you need to know on day 59 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Let's start with some of today's key developments. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi praises the strategic relationship between Moscow and Tehran as he meets Vladimir Putin for talks on the war. Oil prices climb again as peace talks between the US and Iran stall and shipments through the Strait of Hormuz remain limited. Israel's military says it's launched fresh strikes against Hezbollah for the failure of peace negotiations in Pakistan. He then thanked Vladimir Putin for his support while praising the strategic relationship between Moscow and Tehran. Mr. Putin promised to continue to support Iran, saying he hopes peace will prevail. Well, let's speak now to Bahman Kalbasi from BBC Persian. He joins us live now from New York. Bahman, good to see you. How important for Iran right now is this strategic relationship with Russia?
It has been reported that Russians were helpful in the war, intelligence-wise, and of course the support they gave in the Security Council. So that strategic relationship, as Mr. Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, just mentioned, is important. There was a meeting with the senior military officials in Russia as well. There has been warnings by Russians that Israel and the U.S. might be regrouping and getting ready for another round of attacks. So this all could fall under the continuation of this relationship, and Iran getting assistance from Russia in preparing for a possibility of a resumption of the war, as well as looking to Russia for ways to maybe play a role if the nuclear file were to be settled. Especially one of the most important sticking points is U.S.'s insistence that Iran's 60% enriched uranium be sent out of Iran, something Iran says it will never do and never allow, but maybe the middle way would be that that material goes to Russia. So all of those are obviously things that they would talk about, and this.
And we'll pause for a second. What this shows you is that Iran has other options, despite what the Trump administration has been telling you. He's right. They could do something where they send that enrichment, that enriched uranium to Russia and have them, hold on to it. Iran could actually do that. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but what this goes to show you is that, first of all, I do believe the U.S. and Israel, they are going to attack Iran again. How soon that'll be, who knows? Could be in the next couple of days. Iran also feels that way. Wait till you hear what Russia is going to say, though, because this is the part I think that should give everyone pause. Like I said before, Iran has a relationship with Russia. They have a relationship with China. And I warned about this domino effect that could happen if the U.S. doesn't get out of this. And it was Israel, obviously, urging this and advocating for this, knowing damn well that the U.S. was not going to be able to just come in and take out Iran the way that Israel said that it could. Now Donald Trump is in this tangled web, and he doesn't know how to get out of it without making a fool out of himself. Because if he sits there and says, we're just going to leave Iran alone, well, then he looks like a fool, because then people are going to say, but I thought you said they were a threat and they still are building a nuclear weapon, which I've been hearing my whole life, by the way. I've been hearing that my whole life. But then this situation at the Strait of Hormuz and the issue that we have with the oil is causing problems here home, right back here in America. And we'll get to that as well. But you got to remember, Iran has a friend called Russia.
Regional trip is about the Iranian government trying to find ways to end the war on its own terms. As we've heard now, a proposal given to Pakistanis that will give the Americans an option of settling the issue of Strait of Hormuz, opening that for now in return for end of the war, official end of the war, and lifting of the blockade, and then pushing the can down the road when it comes to the nuclear file. It's unclear how the United States will respond to that. We heard passingly from the United States president that this was a positive move, but it was not enough. And we know there's a Situation Room meeting about that today as well in the White House.
And very briefly, Bahman, if you would, how concerned do you think Iran is about President Putin's continued support in terms of the fact that he is keeping an eye, of course, on his strategic relationship with the United States?
They think Mr. Putin is more on their side than it is on the United States' side. Obviously, Mr. Putin has also been proven not to be the best ally at all times. During this the 12-day war in June, there was a lot of rumblings in Iran that Russia didn't come to our aid. There was more assistance apparently during the 40-day war. So it's not a solid, alliance that will always be there, but it is one that Iran hopes to be able to count on in circumstances that is very fluid as we are in right now.
Yeah, I see this as a big deal as well because Iran, even though they have this relationship with Russia, Iran is not a part of BRICS. Now, China is a part of BRICS, but Iran is not. So I think at one point they may have expressed some type of interest in joining BRICS, but the current state is they're not there just yet. But this is, I'm going to show you what Vladimir Putin said too. And I don't know what Trump is going to do about this one, but good God.
Okay, BBC Persian's Bahman Kalbasi, thank you very much.
Let's go to the next part here because I want you to see this. This is what Vladimir Putin said to Iran's foreign minister here.
And of course, we really hope that based on this courage, this commitment to independence, the people of Iran, under the leadership of the supreme leader, they will go through this period of trials and they will see peace established in the country. And of course, we really hope that based on this courage.
Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry. Iran is a member of BRICS. That's right. I forgot about that. Sorry, guys. They joined in 2024. Sorry about that. But did you hear what Vladimir Putin said here?
And of course, we really hope that based on this courage, this commitment to independence, the people of Iran, under the leadership of the supreme leader, they will go through this period of trials and they will see peace established in the country.
So Russia is willing to help Iran, I guess, as much as they can without possibly not getting as much heat come their way. Now, there's a lot going on, right? Because Russia and Ukraine are still at war. And then now you have this war with Iran. And I'm going to tell you, if Russia gets involved in this, the U.S. is not, we'll get to what King Charles just said, because I'm going to give you a warning. The U.S. would not win this. The U.S. would not be able to beat Iran and Russia. What they would try to do is probably get some of the other NATO countries to jump in and to assist them and help with this. And at that point, we would have World War III, which is honestly what I think Donald Trump wants. Again, when we were talking about that spiritual element before, I think Donald Trump wants that to happen because, again, it gets closer to the end times. And speaking of that, I want you to hear what King Charles just said to Congress. He is here in the United States. Listen to what he says here.
Immediate aftermath of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together, as our people have done so for more than a century, shoulder to shoulder through 2 world wars, the Cold War, Afghanistan, and moments that have defined our shared security. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
So let me tell you what King Charles is really saying. All right. Because he's going around the table instead of just saying it frankly. King Charles is basically trying to get the U.S. government to go to war with Russia. Because you can't listen to this and say he just wants the U.S. to give Ukraine weapons. No, the U.S. has been doing that. But the U.S. knows that Ukraine can't beat Russia. This is what some of us tried to tell people at the very beginning this war started, that there was no way Ukraine would be able to beat Russia. And we were called all kind of names, Putin puppets and everything. So King Charles, who, by the way, would not meet with the Epstein victims while he was here in this country, while he was here in D.C., and they were disappointed that he wouldn't meet with them. He had time to go to Congress and basically tell them that the U.S. needs to go to war with Russia. They need to fight Russia. Now, he's not going to say it the way that I said it, but that's what he's saying. Now, add it all up, guys. The ballroom, the military and, complex under this ballroom that they want so badly. King Charles coming to the U.S. First thing that I saw when he was here, I was like, why is he coming here? King Charles coming to the United States to tell them you need to help Ukraine. So you're going to have to go to war with Russia because you giving them weapons isn't enough, which they knew that anyway to begin with. It's all setting the stage for World War III. If we go to war with Russia, that's what we will have. And when it comes to what's happening with Iran and with Russia, we are seeing a different world. This is the multipolar world that the U.S. doesn't want to be a part of. Listen to what Vladimir Putin said here.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin says the foundations of global growth are undergoing irreversible changes, signaling a shift in the balance of global power. In a video addressed to the Open Dialogue Forum in Moscow, Putin said the developments in recent years have transformed key drivers of growth from economics and finance to technology and demographics. He noted that traditional models of international relations are losing relevance, pointing in part to actions of Western states. Putin said leadership is increasingly shifting toward emerging economies, in particular the global south, as a new multipolar world is emerging. And he stressed that countries safeguarding that sovereignty will play a central role in this evolving system.
There you go. This is the change. Everything is changing, guys. So again, we got to remember the West is small. The rest of the world is larger than us. The way that the West has been able to maintain this dominance and this power over these other countries is because of imperialism, all these wars, and of course, having the NATO allies that back you, that can jump in and help defend as well, that can jump in and say, it's France stealing resources from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. It's not just us. These NATO allies have been doing this as well. So that's why the U.S. needs to have those NATO allies so that they have a group that can help them fight this. But I'm here to tell you right now as well. I even think, even if it was a NATO thing, I still don't think that Russia would lose. Because Russia also has a friend, and that's China. Instead of just leaving these countries alone, especially with Iran, the West wants to maintain that dominance. Now we get to the part here about Donald Trump's response. He is very upset. Iran just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. Ladies and gentlemen, that is false. They did not inform that to the President of the United States. We are the ones in a state of collapse. We're the ones that have 70% of Americans that can't afford to get by right now. We're the ones collapsing. He goes on to say they want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald Trump. Guys, no one from Iran has confirmed that. That is a lie. even more of a meltdown here. And we'll get to what's happening with the UAE as well. This is all a domino effect. Donald Trump is not happy that Iran is not willing to forego their enriched uranium.
On where there is breaking news at this hour. First, the president said to be unhappy with the regime's latest ceasefire proposal, namely because it does not address Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, to the breaking news on OPEC, Lucas Tomlinson's watching that. He's back live today in Dubai from overseas. And Lucas, hello there.
Good morning, Bill. Some big news out of the Emirates. Say the UAE announcing they will be leaving OPEC on May 1st. That's the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. Iran was one of 5 founding members back in 1960. The UAE, the 7th largest oil exporter in the world. It appears that Iran, a big reason for the UAE to be leaving. Now, as far as negotiations with Iran going, we've heard from President Trump that he's unhappy with the negotiations going on right now. Recall just over the weekend, the president canceled the trip by his special envoys, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, going to Pakistan to re-engage with the Iranians. And just a reminder for our viewers, Bill, about what President Trump's red lines are in these negotiations. End all uranium enrichment, dismantle the enrichment facilities, hand over that highly enriched uranium, end funding for terrorist proxies, fully open the strait, no more charging tolls, shut down the toll booth. Now, in an exclusive interview with our own Trey Ying, Secretary of State Marco Rubio explained why Iran has closed the strait.
They don't just seek to dominate.
Pause this for a second. So does everybody see what's happening? Trump is mad because Iran is not going to forego their enriched uranium, which they said from the very beginning. He thought he could bomb that fear into them. Oh, I'm going to bomb your bridges. Oh, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to blow this up. And he thought that would get them to cave. But what Donald Trump doesn't realize and fails to realize is that the Iranian people are fighters. This is not Iraq. You can't just come in and just be like, swoop. This is not Venezuela. You can't just come in and just be like, swoop. There's a reason why the other presidents before him did not go to war with Iran. Now listen to what Marco Rubio says here.
Iran, they seek to dominate the region. And imagine that with a nuclear weapon. Look what they've done with the Straits. Great example. The Straits is basically the equivalent of an economic nuclear weapon that they're trying to use against the world. And they're bragging about it.
Now, while hundreds of ships remain at anchors.
Again, they want to paint it like Iran is the enemy when we attack them. Iran was just chilling.
Stuck in the Persian Gulf behind me, the first LNG carrier, liquefied natural gas, recently transited the Strait of Hormuz since the war began 2 months ago. She left from a port here in the Emirates. Now, not only is the Gulf important to the world's energy industry, as we know and is documented, it's arguably more critical to the global fertilizer industry. 30% of the world's fertilizer trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Its closure has affected farmers across the world, including in the United States.
We'll get to that in just a second. So he is tweeting and he is posting on Truth Social to make it seem like he's getting a win when in reality he's not, and he's really upset. Now, I want to show you what Professor Morandi said about this just recently.
That is a very difficult question for me to ask, for me to answer. So anything I say is just speculation. But based on what I'm seeing, it seems to me that the chances for further U.S. aggression, Zionist aggression against Iran are not low. They are significantly, they are significant. And I think that it's quite possible that within the next few days, the United States and the Israeli regime will launch another campaign against the Iranian people. Of course, Iran is fully prepared, and Iran continues to follow the negotiated settlement. But Iran is not going to appease the United States. Iran is not going to give the United States concessions that go against Iran's sovereignty. The United States has to accept the fact that Iran is an independent country and any agreement must be based upon the 10-point plan that the Iranians presented, and Trump agreed to have negotiations based on those 10-point plan. So I think the chances for war are somewhat high. I think the chances for war in the coming days is again somewhat high. The Iranians will continue to negotiate, but the Iranians will not be intimidated. And the Iranians have the ability to make Trump regret any war, just like it did last time and the time before during the 12-day war. And again, the devastation that they can impose upon the Iranian people can easily be imposed upon U.S. proxies in the region, the Israeli regime, and of course, that will lead to a global economic depression, which will be catastrophic for the United States and its allies too. So the smart thing would be for Trump to change course and stop listening to the Zionists and Netanyahu.
And that would mean that he would have to admit that he failed. But, you know, the goal is not necessarily to win these conflicts. These are banker wars. And this one in particular is a banker war, but also I'll show you who's making the money here, but also a war for Israel and world domination here. Now, shocking thing that's coming out of this, the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, has also announced that they are leaving OPEC. Now, this is big news. Again, this is all because of this war that Donald Trump started. That's why all these things are happening. The UAE leaving OPEC, so they would be following Qatar. Qatar left OPEC in 2019, I believe. Right now, Saudi Arabia is the largest producer of oil for OPEC. So I wonder what Saudi Arabia is going to say about all of this. And I'll tell you about Saudi in just a minute, but let's get into
the
this.
United Arab Emirates has announced that it's going to withdraw from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. That includes the bloc's broader alliance, OPEC+. Now, that move comes as Gulf countries face unprecedented economic disruption after the US and Israel war on Iran. The UAE has released a statement saying this decision aligns with the UAE's long-term strategic economic vision and the development of its energy sector. It's also driven by national interests and the country's commitment to actively contributing to meeting the urgent needs of the market stemming from disruptions in the Arabian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, which impact supply dynamics. The stability of the global energy system depends on the availability of flexible, reliable, and affordable supplies. Let's bring it out.
OPEC is, I see people asking this question. OPEC is the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries organization. We'll get into that a little bit more here.
Al Jazeera's Dominic Kane, he's live for us in Berlin. What are we to make of that statement, Dominic?
On the face of it, it's something that really concerns the United Arab Emirates. Why should people in Europe really be concerned about it? Well, for several simple reasons. This continent is already experiencing a certain degree of concern at the governmental level about the supply of oil and other fuels. Several different countries in different ways have been intimating they fear a shortage of different kinds of oil cropping up in the course of the next few months. Certainly the Swedes were the latest to express a degree of concern. Their Economy Minister was speaking precisely about the topic today, saying that jet fuel is something to really be concerned about. So when you then bring it back to the stated reasons for that departure of a founder country, as my colleague was just alluding to, then you get the sense that here in this continent, at least, there's great concern, as I was saying. And why does it matter in this continent? Well, OPEC is based in Vienna, in Austria, and they will be meeting, OPEC and OPEC Plus will be meeting in Vienna tomorrow, where on the face of it, it will be the last time where the emissary, the ambassador from the UAE will take their seats and look around the table at the other members and consider, well, I will be leaving there. But from Friday, no more UAE representation in OPEC or in OPEC Plus, organizations that the UAE has been involved in for decades.
Al Jazeera's Dominic Kane reporting live there from Berlin. Many thanks indeed to Dominic. Here's a closer look at what OPEC actually is. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries was formed in 1960 by Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela, but it expanded to include the UAE, Algeria, Libya, Nigeria, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, and the Republic of Congo. OPEC members are responsible for around 40% of the world's oil. That could be more than 30 million barrels a day. The group meets to set oil production targets and to manage global oil prices for the group. OPEC Plus combines the original members with an additional 10 countries, including major oil producer Russia. Kingsmill Bond is an energy strategist at Ember Futures. He explains this decision for us in greater detail.
It is a very clever moment to do it when there's an oil shortage anyway, and therefore they are preparing themselves clearly for the period after the war, because now that we've obviously reached peak oil demand and we're entering into a new environment, they want to be free from the constraints of OPEC to do what they need to do. The UAE is, I would suggest, preparing for a world after the Iran war where oil demand is in decline and OPEC's power to maintain control and discipline will consequently be weaker. And it's a very rational move on their part.
And I'm going to tell you something else. You know, a lot of times we think about oil and we think about gas, like putting gas in our car or maybe heating like our homes. But oil is also used for so many other things that people need to think about. And that brings me to what's happening here with the farmers. 70% of U.S. farmers say they can't afford the fertilizer they need for this year's growing season. They plan to reduce their crop size to compensate. You guys hear me? They are going to reduce their crop size to compensate. What that means, and we're already seeing some of this at the grocery store, where the prices, especially for meat, has increased. So if they reduce their crop size and we still have the same demand, that means the prices are going to increase even higher. So see, you also need, the farmers need oil for fertilizer. Oil is used to make plastics, like so many things that we use that we may just not think about. And I looked into this after this whole, Strait of Hormuz thing went down. I looked into it and I was like, holy shit, we use oil for a lot of things. And so now the farmers have been hit. By the way, 70% of farmers in this country. And this is another example of how foreign policy impacts us here in the United States. So if you notice like the meat prices increasing, because I have, this is part of the reason why. When the fuel increases, that means that, that takes us back to the trucks that deliver their goods. They still have to fill up their trucks with gas. The gas prices are higher, so they have to pay more for gas, which means it costs them more money to deliver the food from the farms to the grocery stores now. The prices are increasing. It's a domino effect. This is also a good thing why you should not have these wars. But again, we talk about even the oil issue that's happening, that's come out of this with the Middle East. You got to see who's really making the money. And this is what it all goes back to. Shout out to Eric for 11 Demands chart here. War equals big profits for the billionaire-owned energy companies. It can't get much clearer than it is on this chart. A huge spike in profits when the attacks start. So this is BP. You guys familiar with BP oil? BP oil trading boosted by Iran war price whiplash. So let's just look at it. I mean, if we go back to 2022, you'll see here, all of a sudden, here's that boost when Russia invaded Ukraine, February 24th, 2022. You see how they make more money? And then if we go to, make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you can, there we go. So that was Russia invaded Ukraine 2022, more money for BP. Then if we fast forward, you'll see it starts to dip, increase. U.S.-Israel attacks on Iran, February 28th. They're making money again. So this is who profits. So BP is making money off of this war. The military industrial complex is making money off of this war. That's Lockheed Martin. That's Raytheon. All of them. This is why I keep saying these wars are banker wars, and there are people making money off of them. But, you know, it's not us. So they are making huge profits off of this war. Eric, can we go to the next part there? And this reminds me when I was talking about Saudi Arabia, the thing that you got to remember is Saudi Arabia is open to whoever is going to make the money. What do I mean by that? They entertained a couple years ago joining BRICS. Now, they didn't fill out an application, but they entertained it. They were meeting. They were having these talks because they were interested. Oh, let's go check out this BRICS thing. They also still have a relationship and business with the United States. The point that I'm trying to make is this. I don't think that Saudi Arabia is loyal to anyone but Saudi Arabia. And not necessarily people, but the people who run and shit in Saudi Arabia. Therefore, whoever is going to make the money. That's what a lot of this comes down to. But a lot of this could have been prevented, and it wasn't. And there was warning about this long ago. This is John Kiriakou. He is a whistleblower, former CIA. He's a whistleblower. They really came after him when he started spilling the beans. I want you to hear what he said back during the Iraq War, about what happened back during the Iraq War. Listen to this.
History. I've told this story a million times. The night before we attacked Iraq, we had the final Principals Committee meeting. The Principals Committee is normally chaired by the president.
Yep.
It includes the vice president, the secretaries of state and defense, the national security advisor, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the vice chairman, and in this case, the head of CENTCOM, and then a bunch of senior level NSC people, and everybody brings a note taker. I was George Tenet's note taker, and he was the director of the CIA at the time. And for whatever reason, the president didn't attend this meeting. There was something else going on, so the vice president chaired the meeting. And
wait, the president didn't attend the final principals meeting before the Iraq War?
Right.
But Dick Cheney did?
But Dick Cheney did. Boy, did he.
Okay, sorry.
And to make a long story short, General Tommy Franks, who was the commander of Central Command at the time, gave his briefing. You know, our men are here and there and elements of this group and that group and the Third Corps and the First Corps. And I'm like, okay. And I'm writing it all down. And then he says, if all goes as well, we're going to invade Iraq the next morning. If all goes as well, we can be in Tehran by August. And George discreetly turns off his microphone. And then he turns to me. I'm sitting behind his right shoulder. And he says, did he say Tehran or did he say Baghdad? And I said, he said Tehran. And George says, have these people lost their minds? I got back to the office at the end of the meeting, and the deputy director said to me, how'd the principals committee meeting go? And I said, did you know we were going to attack Iran? And he said, are they still talking about that? We're not going to attack Iran. That's just a pipe dream that these people at the White House have. And I said, do they know nothing about history? And he said, no, they know nothing about history. As we were walking out of that meeting, one of the NSC people, a guy who I disrespected, I think the most of my colleagues at the NSC, he said giddily, as we were standing up to walk out of the meeting, he said, when we cross that border tomorrow, they're going to throw flowers at us. And I thought, buddy, have you never read a history book? They're not going to see us as liberators. They're going to see us as invaders and occupiers.
So
history.
That was a warning there from John Kiriakou. They were talking about invading Tehran all the way back to the Iraq War, and probably even before that. But he was a part of that at that point in time. So he's speaking from, you know, what he saw, his own personal experience. And then there's another thing that he said, like how the U.S. even thought that they could just take Iran that way.
Just to your point about the president believing that Iran was a house of cards that just needed one swift push to collapse. Where did he get that idea?
He could only have gotten that idea from Benjamin Netanyahu. That's it. Because the CIA analysis has been consistent over the course of decades. We can't just fire a couple of rockets and take down a government in a country of 93 million people. That's just not the way real life works. They're going to rally around their leadership because we're outsiders.
And that is true. And this is what the general said there. The 7 countries in 5 years, and the one that's left is Iran. The one that's left is Iran. So it was always a part of a plan, and it had nothing to do with Iran building a nuclear weapon, which they're not. It had nothing to do with the protest in Iran. This was planned a long time ago, because Iran, they see as a threat, because they're part of the axis of resistance, because they're not pro-Israel. And there you go. And all I can tell you guys is this, I think a lot of people have woken up and they're not okay with these wars. And my only caution that I want to give to you is pay close attention and be very careful, especially right now, because they're going to try to do everything that they can to break us apart. Those of us who have managed to come together, and many of you managed to come together on this platform, because we don't want the wars. So pay attention. And when that happens, you just got to say hell to the no. None of this would have happened. The farmers would not be short on fertilizer. The meat prices wouldn't be as high as they are now. None of this would have happened if the U.S. and Israel didn't go to war with Iran. All right, let's go ahead and I'm on time. I'm short on time. Okay. We'll save the super chats. Let me get to the next story, because we still got 2 stories left. Sorry, guys. All right. Speaking of money, the working class, and those of us here in the US, we have a big problem. Americans are broke. In fact, the recent poll that just came out just revealed that. Now, this was a CBS News poll. I want you guys to hear this. Again, 70% of Americans are living basically day to day, barely getting by. Are you one of these people? Let me know in the chat. Let me know if you're one of the people that's struggling.
More than 70% of Americans say they are struggling to pay for food, housing, and health care, according to a CBS News poll. Saturday morning co-host Kelly O'Grady has some tips to cut her costs.
It's getting more expensive to go shopping. From housing and gas to clothes, Americans are feeling the squeeze. Food prices have jumped nearly 20% since 2022, and they could go even higher. Yep. Diesel prices are up over 50% since the start of the conflict with Iran. Remember, diesel fuels the trucks that transport most food and household items to the store.
But there are some ways to save on feeding your family. With me is shopping and lifestyle expert Maureen Petrosky.
Pause. Notice what they immediately pivot to. Here's how you can save on feeding your family. Notice what they don't call out. They don't call out the corruption. They don't call out the corporations. They don't call out the corporate greed. They don't call out the billionaire class, because guess what? The billionaires are not struggling. They're not suffering. Every time we have an economic downturn, they are fine. So let's hear what they say.
Who's going to share her secrets to savings? Ready to shop? Let's go. Okay, so we're starting in the meat section, because there are actually a lot of money-saving substitutions, right?
Definitely. Prep work is important. Having a list is important, but more importantly is having a budget so you can be flexible with your list. For instance, if on your list you've got chicken breast, but chicken thighs are on sale, it's a simple swap and an easy way to save money. You want to.
People who are on a budget already do this. People who have to budget their money for groceries, they already do this. They already say, okay, well, this package here is cheaper. I'm going to get the cheaper package.
Make sure you look for price per unit.
And I mean, that's a savings of $1 per pound.
Per pound.
I'm a big fruit girl. It always needs to be fresh. What's a way to save?
It's not always best to be in the fresh section. Let's head to freezer.
Okay, so you want me to trade my fresh fruit for...
Stop. It's not always best to be in the fresh section. Which means, yeah, you can always get frozen fruit. Frozen fruit is still fine as well. But the reality is that means you're going to end up eating more processed foods. And processed foods are usually higher in sugar and salt, sodium, and also can lead to problems later on down the line if you're only eating a lot of processed foods. See, this part is important for people to hear, because the reality is when you go to the grocery store, you should spend most of your time on the outskirt of the grocery store, not going up and down the aisles. Up and down the aisles is usually where a lot of the processed food is. So what they're admitting to you is it requires money to eat healthy. Does that seem to be fair to you? Let's see what they say about the frozen food.
Freezer? I do. Actually, fruit, vegetables are picked or packaged at their peak ripeness. That way, when they go to the freezer, they're perfectly sweet. And as you can see, tons of sales.
I love saving time. I often like to buy prepackaged.
Something that's prepackaged like this, if you shop from scratch and buy the parts instead, you can save up to 40%.
Whoa, 40%?
Yes.
And as consumers are tightening their wallets, grocery chains are taking notice. Target recently lowered prices on 3,000 products. Aldi leaned into its Budget King reputation and dropped prices on roughly 25% of items last summer. Walmart offers temporary rollback discounts and is pushing customers towards its own low-cost brand.
Which means that they could have done this all along. These grocery stores are showing you they could have lowered the prices a long time ago.
But it's not just food you can save on.
Buying in bulk is a great way to save money, especially if you have the space. But be careful, you don't want to buy items in bulk that you're not going to use. Paper products is the perfect thing to buy in bulk.
And I guess if you're buying in bulk, less trips to the store, especially, it saves your time and your money with gas prices costing more.
So again, people who are on a budget and living paycheck to paycheck already know, they already do this. They already do that. Notice that they don't attack the system. They don't attack the corruption, why these things are happening. Otherwise, they would not be on CBS News, right? So here's the point that I want to make. 70% of Americans are struggling to pay for housing and food. They told you about food. They didn't say anything about housing. So I guess they say you just screwed with that. Oh, well, right? You know who's not struggling? I just want to make a comparison so that you guys see what's happening. Elon Musk is about to get a lot richer. Musk would have to pay $23.34 a share to exercise his award, but the stock is currently trading at more than 16 times the price. Elon Musk's net worth stands at nearly $650 billion. That's due to his stakes in SpaceX and Tesla. Elon Musk's net worth is $650 billion. He is on his way to becoming a trillionaire. And I'm going to tell you how he got there because they lie about this too. He's just one example. I'm going to give you another one. So listen to this. I want to show you this part right about here. So he has the Tesla stock, but his SpaceX is pursuing an initial public offering expected to be valued at as much as $2 trillion. Like this is insane. And this is why I tell people, like, when people say affordability crisis, guys, we have to change our vocabulary. Everybody with me? Let's change our vocabulary. From now on, when your representatives say, yes, we know there's an affordability crisis, please push back on them and say, no, there is a wealth inequality in this country. Because it's not just about affordability. We have had wealth inequality in this country for a long time. My state, Massachusetts, has the largest wealth inequality in the country. So I see it. I know it. You have everyday Americans who work hard. And they're a part of the 70% that can barely afford to pay for groceries and housing. There's a wealth inequality. And we're talking about people, some of them have full-time jobs. Hell, even the people that would have been considered middle class 10, 15 years ago are still having to make cuts and to struggle. I didn't even get into all the other things. I didn't even get into the goods that are not covered if people are on SNAP, like diapers, toilet paper, other things that you need like that are not covered. So that's the problem. It's not just, oh, we just have an affordability crisis and people just can't afford. Why can't they afford it? We have been heading down this road for a long time. I'm dead serious when I say I do not think this economy ever got back to the point that it was before the 2008 housing crisis. I haven't seen it. If you saw it, let me know. Because when it gets to a point where now, even the states that have $15 minimum wage, when it gets to a point now where $15 an hour still doesn't pay the bills, we have wealth inequality in this country. They keep getting richer. Elon Musk gets richer. But our government is spending all this money for war. Donald Trump got richer. Yeah, he's president of the United States, but he's also a billionaire. And I just want to show you how much money he made. Everyone has an opinion, but Forbes has the answer. $6.5 billion, according to our most recent tally, updated in March. Trump added $1.4 billion over the past year, leveraging the presidency for profit. His cryptocurrency ventures, stalled out before the election, exploded after his victory. That added an estimated $1.8 billion to his fortune overall. Another $500 million came in court, where Trump's legal team succeeded in eliminating a $500 million judgment against him. His once dormant licensing business surged $400 million as former developers clamored to do business with the American president. These people, and it's hilarious to me when people say, oh, he really lost money. Donald Trump has gained more money since he became president this time around. Now, why am I pointing to these two? Donald Trump in particular, who said that he was going to fix it, the economy, and help out the everyday average American that were struggling under the Biden administration, struggling since the pandemic, actually, and some longer than that, has not done that. What he has done is he has enriched himself and his billionaire friends like Elon Musk. Elon Musk has government contracts, fam. SpaceX has a government contract. And Elon Musk bought Twitter and changed the algorithm to favor the Trump administration. Yeah, there's people who are monetized on X and they get a little bit. I'm monetized on X. They don't really pay me much. I'm not one of those accounts. I'm lucky if I get like a payment from X that says $45. The accounts that he elevated, the Trump surrogates, these people are getting $10,000 a month just from X. So while Donald Trump enriched himself and his buddies, 70% of Americans are barely finding a way to afford groceries and to pay for housing. We have a problem. But they want to build this ballroom. And for Lindsey Graham to stand there and say taxpayers should pay for it, the same taxpayers who can't afford to buy groceries? These people continue to get rich. Look at the Congress members too. It's not just the president. Look at the Congress members. Ask yourself how, if you have a congressional salary of $160,000 a year, ask yourself how some of these Congress members are millionaires. Where's that other money coming from? These people got rich and they were able to do so by screwing over people like me and you. That's how they got rich. But when you ask for something, they want to tell you, we ain't got money for that. We can't give everybody health care because we don't have money for that. But we got all this money for war. We got money for weapons that cost millions and billions of dollars. But how dare you ask for health care? Everybody see it now? Donald Trump ain't did shit for the working class at this point in time. Not yet. Hasn't done shit. Did you get your Doge check? Hello? What did you get from Donald Trump? Where's all this stuff that he said he was going to do? And he ran on it. I didn't expect much from Biden because he didn't run on it. He ran on the soul of America, he said. Elon Musk, another one. And I'm going to tell you about this one. He is one of the worst of the worst of the worst. Elon Musk was advocating for, people have to go back and remember, Elon Musk was advocating for, he said, Americans are not smart enough for these jobs, so we need to bring in other people to do these tech jobs. Elon Musk said that. But they'll sit up there and they'll point their finger at you and say that you don't work hard enough. No, you're working too hard. You hear me? You're working too hard. They're not working hard enough. They get other people to work hard for them. That's how they become billionaires. When you look at how their wealth has exploded over the years, this chart, I've shown it before. We need to look at it again. This is the billionaire wealth over a decade. I just want you to see how at no point in time, the only time actually, 2020, there's a drop. That was the pandemic. That makes sense, right? But since then, notice how their wealth continues to accumulate. 2026, billionaires are now at 20.1 trillion. Their wealth increases, our wealth declines, and their wealth increases by making sure that our wealth doesn't. Because if they paid you what you actually are worth, they wouldn't be able to pay themselves what they're paying themselves right now. That's the problem. So when people say affordability crisis, they don't get to the next step, which is why can't people afford it? But we've been giving money to Israel so that everyone in Israel can have health care. They have free university in Israel. But if you mention that here in the United States, the politicians will look at you and say, that's socialism. But we got socialism for the billionaires. That's how they got there. In fact, let's go ahead and debunk some of these narratives, right? Let's get into the first one. How do they become billionaires? Shout out to, if you guys have never seen him, Second Thought. He's really good at breaking down class warfare. Listen to what he said here about how billionaires become billionaires. There's 3 ways.
Although Musk likes to play up his version of the everyman story too, his family is most infamously known for his father's ownership of a lucrative emerald mine and role as a property developer in apartheid South Africa. These people didn't start from nothing. It wasn't just hard work. Billionaires never get there alone. They get there in any combination of 3 ways. 1, family wealth and privilege. 2, labor exploitation. And 3, government help.
Those are the big 3. Family wealth and privilege, which Elon Musk already had. Donald Trump already had. Labor exploitation and government help. And I want to focus on the government help part because everyone knows about the labor exploitation. Everyone knows about, okay, well, their parents had the money and they passed it on to them. But I think a lot of people miss the government help piece. So let me tell you how these billionaires how they get socialism that they don't want you to have.
Government help. Here, the conservative and libertarian views of the world's billionaires are the most evidently hypocritical. Elon Musk is probably one of the biggest offenders, so let's come back to him for a second. Musk often talks about the government in very disfavorable terms. He regularly decries government regulation, does everything he can to avoid taxation, and fiercely defends the belief that markets should be free. That said, the billionaire's companies, SpaceX, Tesla, and Solar City, would have no hope of existing without the government's absurd $4.9 billion in loans and tax breaks.
$4.9 billion in loans and tax breaks for Elon Musk's companies. But they want to tell you you're not working hard enough. They want to tell you you have to get up off your ass and you work in 2 jobs. They're telling you don't take handouts from the government, but they take handouts from the government. This is what they don't want you to know. That's also why they don't want people on the left and the right to come together when it comes to the class issue, because then once more people start to see this, a lot of people are going to be pissed.
We're using Musk as a flagrant example here, but the nature of our current economy is that throughout the entirety of the chain of production, government subsidies are granted from public money only for the profits to be privatized by people who hoard wealth at a level we haven't seen since the Gilded Age. Pharmaceutical research is another classic example of this phenomenon, where large amounts of government funds produce the innovations needed for life-saving medication, only to eventually be appropriated by the private sector, where profits stay squarely within the hands of a few executives who jack up prices and strand countless Americans without access to the healthcare they need.
And oftentimes, a lot of, these prescriptions that, everyday Americans rely on are made very cheaply. Some of these medications, it could cost like maybe 50 cents, $1 to make it, but they're charging you out the ass for it. That's also how they make their money. At the end of the day, it comes down to this. I haven't shown this in a while, but I feel like this just always fits. People really got to understand what's going on here. You see, not as much has changed as you think. When we look at feudalism then and now, there are different categories, but they're similar. So like if we look at medieval feudalism, at the very top, you had the monarchs. So these are the kings and the queens. After them, you have the landed gentry, the dukes, the earls, the barons. Then you would have the clergy. That includes like archbishops and the priests. Next would come the royal ministers, the chancellors, constables, and the sheriffs. Then you would have the merchants, traders, explorers, etc. Then the vassals, tenant farmers, military officers. And then at the bottom, everyone else, peasants, laborers, and conscripts. And if you look at what we have today, we have corporate feudalism, where at the very top, you have the billionaires. I'd also say, the big banks, we have the banks next, but they're at the top. They're the monarchs of our day today. After the billionaire class, you have the big bankers. So that would include JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. After the big bankers, you have the corporate elite. These are the Fortune 500 CEOs, the multinationals. Notice where you see elected officials, and this is the part that people have to pay attention to. The elected officials aren't at the top. They're not at the bottom, but they're right smack dab in the middle. The presidents, the MPs, the representatives. What this shows you is, once again, the representatives, the politicians, are just puppets of the billionaire class. Their strings are pulled by them. These people are not at the top of the chain unless you're a billionaire politician like Donald Trump. Next, you have the top bureaucrats. These are commissioners, secretaries, those federal judges, They come after elected officials. And then you'll have the top professionals, doctors, entertainers, clergy. And at the bottom is everyone else. Workers, students, and even the soldiers, we're at the bottom. Problem is, some people think that they're all the way up here, and they're not. Some people think that they're a part of top professionals, but they're actually here at the bottom with everyone else. Most of us are at the bottom. That's just the reality. Hell, you notice the doctors are just above the bottom. And doctors can make a lot of money, but they're still not up there where you would think they would be. This is the problem. Now, the way that you would fix this is you would crush this pyramid, and instead of this triangle and this hierarchy, you would have a horizontal line and everybody would be on the same page. All of us would be on the same level. But the reality is you can't have that in the capitalist system. And that's how we get here. The trickle down effect did not work. Didn't actually trickle down. People at the top continue to get richer. So when you see these polls that show you that 70% of Americans are struggling to pay for groceries and for housing, we have been heading in this direction. And sometimes all it takes is one or two things like a pandemic or for a housing crisis for people to wake up and really see it. But we've been heading this way. When people tell you not to focus on the billionaires, you look at them and you say, hell to the no. I don't think a lot of people realize how much $1 billion is. And now you know how they get there if you didn't know. So the whole we were self-made, that's a lie. There's no such thing as a self-made billionaire. Because they either have one of the three. They did labor exploitation, they had family wealth, so it was passed down to them, or they got the government benefits. Think about it. All right. All right, ladies and gents, we are moving on to the next story. If you haven't had a chance to do so, do me a solid and smash that like button. Thank you very much. Let's keep it moving and grooving. Okay. We have talked a lot on this show about Epstein and the Epstein files. There was just an interview that was done by 60 Minutes of Australia. And they interviewed one of the victims from Zorro Ranch. And now we are seeing that there are men who have been abused. Men. And I want to bring you in here. Multiple men drugged and we're going to say assaulted because it's YouTube. Multiple men drugged and assaulted at super predator Epstein's secretive New Mexico ranch. See, this is what I was talking about a while back. I was wondering if there were also men. We had spoke before on this show about Sasha Riley, and those claims have not been confirmed. But I wondered even then, I was like, well, if this is true, it makes me wonder, were there other men, were there other males that were also abused? And so let's just fast forward a little bit here. Multiple young men were abused and assaulted, were drugged and assaulted at Jeffrey Epstein's remote New Mexico ranch. It has been claimed, and local authorities continue to investigate historic allegations of abuse. So this is the new information that's coming out of Zorro Ranch. Democrat Congresswoman for New Mexico, Melanie Stansbury, is fighting for justice for survivors, says one alleged victim claimed that he had been invited to a party at the late pedophile's 7,500 acre Zorro Ranch, where he said he was supplied with drugs and assaulted. I think they mean supplied, but in the recent episode, it's 60 Minutes Australia, Stansberry says the unnamed man described multiple young men assaulted at the ranch in front of him after he was drugged. So let me just say something here for a second. You know, a couple years ago, there were people that were making claims, and this is why we got to get past the word conspiracy as a bad thing. There were people making claims that they were abused when they were underage and that there were politicians that participated in it. And back during that time, you know, people were talking about Pizzagate and everything, and they were called, conspiracy theorists. And now when the Epstein files were released, you start to see more and hear all these other things. And now we go back to that moment and we say, wait a minute, maybe these people were not conspiracy theorists. Maybe they were telling the truth. And then we have to get down to, is the word conspiracy actually a bad thing? We have to get to that as well. And I'm trying to tell people, stop looking at the word conspiracy as a bad thing. A lot of times conspiracy can be tainted by mainstream media because you're telling a narrative that they're not telling. Your story is different from the story that they're telling you. And now I look back at some of those other stories and I'm like, so young men, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were serial abusers. They really were super predators, and it's just how they lived their lives. Let's get into a little bit of this here. So the woman who is speaking here is Congressman Stansberry. Listen to what she said at this point. I think this is the part about the two girls that they said were buried at the ranch. Listen to this.
Tip-off forwarded to the FBI in 2019 that was seemingly never investigated.
The email reads, "Did you know somewhere in the hills outside of the Zorro, 2 foreign girls were buried on orders of Jeffrey and Madam G? Both died by strangulation during rough fetish sex."
That was the first time I had heard of Zorro Ranch, that there might be bodies that were, buried there. This docuseries from 60 Minutes, they also go on to discuss that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell allegedly played sexual games with people that could have apparently cost them their lives. Like this, guys, when I'm telling you that they didn't release all the files, they didn't release all the files for a reason. And I think back to those people that were saying that there were politicians that were involved. And I think that's part of the reason why. I don't think it's just, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. Yeah, their names are all throughout the files. But I think it goes much deeper than that. I think it goes much, much deeper. And I also wouldn't be surprised if some of them were also women. One of the things that, some of the victims have said is that Ghislaine Maxwell was actually worse than Jeffrey Epstein. So think about that for a second.
Not nice to read.
No. I was so alarmed by that particular tip that came into the FBI that I immediately contacted the New Mexico Attorney General to reopen a criminal investigation. And the way that tip was reported matched the pattern of other abuse and transport and trafficking of women. And that's why it raised alarm bells for me.
And they did not look deeper into it after that, at that point. So the next part that I want to get into is the Attorney General here, when he is questioned, when you received that tip, why wasn't there a search done? So listen to this.
If there are tips that there are women buried on the property or near the property, then is that not probable cause to actually search the place?
Yes, it is concerning that they would say in the fall of 19 that they don't have probable cause to enter his property in New Mexico. And I for the life of me, I can't understand why you would leave New Mexico out.
It beggars belief.
So that was the other thing that really made me pause. The fact that they didn't have probable cause to search that property after a tip came in saying that there were bodies that were buried there. So what that tells me is that 9 times out of 10, I'm willing to bet they had a mole on the inside. This kind of thing doesn't just happen in movies. So they probably had a mole that was working inside of law enforcement to make sure that they wouldn't be able to investigate that property, to search that property in such said way. This has been happening for years. Like, read the stories about the mob and you'll hear about this as well. It's like they had FBI agents, they had members of the CIA, they had FBI, CIA, they had the beat street officers, detectives that were working with law enforcement, but they were moles. They were basically being paid by the mob and other, gangsters to basically run cover for those organizations so that they can continue the crimes that they were doing. I would not be surprised if the same thing wasn't happening here. Because to me, that's wild to say that they don't have probable cause to search it. And I also wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have some judges that were also in, because this goes all the way up. A judge, a cop, a detective, an FBI agent, and they pay them off. And that's how they stay protected.
Doesn't it, when you consider that, in Manhattan, the mansion was raided, on the island, the mansion was raided, in Florida, I assume in Paris. Why not in New Mexico?
That's at the top of mind of so many people. At this point, it's an outrage that with all of these allegations piled up, how could this never have been even searched, even in any sort of basic inquiry? So our state government had asked to seize the ranch even while there was still evidence to preserve, and the federal government never did that.
Because somebody was helping them on the inside. That's usually how these things go. Now, I want to get to Chantel. Chantel said something here, and it reminded me about when we were talking about the island. Notice everybody continued to say, I never went to the island. But Jeffrey Epstein had multiple properties, right? Listen to what Chantel said about which one was the worst. Listen.
So the first abuse happened on the island, and then at Zorro Ranch, New York, Paris, Palm Beach, Saint-Tropez.
Out of all those places that you've just named, was there a particular spot that was more sinister, more scary than the others for you?
Of all the locations, I would say Zorro Ranch was probably the most eerie.
Of all the places, it was Zorro Ranch. So as much as people talk about the island, see what I mean? Because notice those people don't say, I didn't go to the penthouse, the townhouse in Manhattan. I didn't go to, she even mentioned Saint-Tropez. How many properties did Jeffrey Epstein have? Sounds like he had more than we knew of. They don't say they didn't go to those places. And that perception is in the public eye, and it basically makes you think that, oh my gosh, all the horrors happened on that island. Chantel said the worst abuse was at Zorro Ranch. If you're only focused on the island, you may not think about the other places.
Just giant and quiet and literally in the middle of nowhere, and miles of just mountains and dirt for miles.
Who is coming to help you if you're here? If you were at Zorro Ranch, who is coming to help you? You guys see, look at this. There's no one around. There's no other properties. There isn't a gas station. I don't see anything. There's nothing around for miles. So let's say you escape. And this is something, I swear to God, it feels like something out of a movie. Let's say you were able to get away and you escape and you're like, I'm out of here. I'm getting the hell away from this. Where are you going to go? There's nothing there. You're literally in the middle of what looks like the desert. How far away are you from the nearest convenience store, the nearest gas station, anywhere else where you can reach somebody? So that is wild. Very, very secluded.
There was a lot of time spent in my room at Zorro, feeling very much like a mouse trapped in its cage, just kind of waiting until someone would come to my door and say, Jeffrey's ready for his massage now.
What did that really mean?
Rape. Yeah, it was full on, forced on sexual.
That's another one of those code words. So we saw code words that were mentioned throughout the Epstein files, right? Okay. Now we're hearing massage. Now, there were a number of times that people said that, oh, I was there, but I only had a massage. But now she's saying that the word massage was actually a code word for sexual assault. And now I'm starting to think back at all the people who said, I just got a massage. Let's go to the next part here. You can't tell me authorities didn't know that this stuff was going on. This part.
But there were also other terrifying and bizarre accounts shared with her by other victims.
Girls waking up in sort of like a dark room with like a female doctor standing over them, feeling like maybe there is some kind of procedure that had happened that they weren't aware of. And I believe this is in the files. Sure, there's something in there about a baby actually being born. And then just disappearing, like Ghislaine taking it. I personally never witnessed anything like that, but I do remember overhearing conversations about trying to create the perfect baby, the perfect.
Remember we were talking about that? So if these girls woke up and there was a female doctor standing over them, then that would mean that they were drugged. And how often did that happen? And what else did this doctor allegedly do to these girls? Evil people.
Baby, the perfect gene pool. And I know that there was sort of a hunt, if you will, for the perfect gene pool.
Mm-hmm.
Zorro was a wacky hideaway for Epstein and his cronies.
You guys see this? You see how there's nothing there. I don't know how far back we went, but there's literally nothing. So they talked about this whole idea of them making the perfect baby. That was one of the things that we did talk about in the files. It seemed like Jeffrey Epstein seemed to have some interest in eugenics. And again, it's just like, guys, these people, like, we're talking about evil, evil people who had a whole group of friends. And I bring this up because, number one, don't stop talking about the Epstein files. Number two, Ghislaine Maxwell is asking for a pardon. She wasn't just a recruiter. She was also an abuser to these girls. She is asking for a pardon right now. Sick stuff. Sick stuff. The other one here that I wanted to get in, get into. Let me show you this part here as well.
And as the Epstein files reveal, men and boys were not spared, with Epstein accused of multiple rapes.
A man actually claims that he met Jeffrey Epstein, was brought to the ranch, he was drugged, and he describes in detail a scene in which multiple young men were raped at the ranch in front of him after he was drugged.
You hear about Jeffrey Epstein's penchant for minors and for young women, but not men. We haven't heard that before.
Yeah, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were serial abusers. So,
meaning that it didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was male or female. They just were abusers. And let me tell you something else too. I'm gonna tell you, there's more people in those files. And I don't think it's just about not letting it get out who abused these girls. I also think it's about not letting it get out who abused those boys. I think it's that too. I would not be surprised if it's politicians who are probably married who were abusing little boys. But it's people who had the money, or they were adjacent to people that had the money to be there. And all I'm saying is this: there's a lot of things we will probably never know the full story and everybody who was involved. But all I will say is I side-eye people in power, because I wonder how you got there. Doesn't just have to be president. I'm talking about a lot of these powerful positions. I side-eye. I wonder how they got there. How'd you get there? Somebody blackmail you? What did you do? What part of your soul did you give up to get there? I wonder. I really do. But you think about it, has to be people that can get away with that. And that's why I said people in power. And they don't want you to know about that.
So they really were super predators, and it's clear that this was just how they lived their lives.
So they didn't care who or what it was. And they were able to do it and get away with it because they knew that they could. Francis says, Sabby, watch Allie Carter. She's telling everything. Allie Carter. Okay, let me write that down because I forget stuff. People tell me to watch stuff. I forget it. You guys hear what I'm saying? Remember what I told you about, someone mentioned Bill Burr. Remember what I told you, what they said about Bill Burr? How these people get these, start looking at some of these judges, these federal judges, how they get those appointments. Is it just because they worked hard, or they rubbed the right, they rubbed elbows with the right person, or were they blackmailed? We know Hollywood has been Hollywood has been a cesspool for this for years. Now think about politics. It's funny she mentioned super predators because that's what Hillary Clinton had said. Hillary Clinton called, she was talking about younger black boys and called them super predators. And now all of a sudden, nobody seems to know anything. Nobody knows Epstein. I didn't know him. I wasn't his friend. We didn't know each other. I never met the guy. All of a sudden, nobody seems to know this guy that they're in pictures with 10 times over. So I say this, you can watch the documentary, the full one. You can watch it on YouTube, guys. It's 60 Minutes Australia Inside Epstein Zorro Ranch, the FBI cover up exposed. So you can see it on YouTube. But I'm telling you guys, it's some evil people. And I just look at the way all these people move. All these people move. They are more angry about the so-called radical left that they say is such a danger and a threat, they're more angry at that than they are at these people who abuse these young girls and allegedly now boys. They are more angry at leftists tweeting on social media than they are at these people who were abusers. Caroline Leavitt is pregnant right now. Caroline Leavitt is having a baby. And she hanging around all those evil, nasty people. I guess anything for money, huh? Wild stuff, guys. Wild stuff. All right. Let's go to the poll. Do we do the poll, Eric? Did everybody do the poll? I don't think everybody did the poll. Oh, well. Should taxpayers pay for Trump's ballroom? 5% said hell yes. Who said yes? 93% said hell no. And 3% said I'm not sure. I wonder who the 5% was that said yes. Maybe it was somebody trolling. Thanks, Eric. All right. All right, guys, that is it. I think Eric's going to close out the show. Quick update so that people don't get confused and I don't forget. We will have to resume call in next week. I got a lot going on this week in the morning every day. A lot going on this week. So we will resume it next week. Just want to let you guys know. But I haven't forgotten about call in. And I miss talking to you guys, of course. But these past couple of mornings have been brutal. This morning I was up at like 6. So we got a lot going on. But we'll resume it next week. All right. All right. Eric's going to come in and close out the show and finish the super chats as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be reading those off. I also wanted to just say have a little bit of a nuance or a different take with the ballroom, believe it or not.
Uh-oh.
In that, really, yeah. In that we really, I think concentrating on the funding and whether taxpayers are paying for it or whatnot is kind of almost one of those fights they want us to have. And I think what we really need to concentrate on is the project itself, right? Do we need this ballroom? Do we need something more secure? Do we need something that extravagant or whatnot? And we need our not so corrupt government to make a good decision on that, right? Now it's tough because we don't have a non-corrupt government, but if it's decided that that is a project that needs to be done, then it should just and it's essentially a public project, public works, then it should be paid with federal dollars, just like everything else is. It's actually problematic to be having the billionaires or big corporations fund it, because then that becomes a form of big money corruption and influence.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
So I feel like we kind of need to divvy up the parts of that and then think about like each part. So that's my little take on it.
I don't even think he needs the ballroom at all. I don't think he should have it at all, but
Yeah, it's one of those things. If you're going to have events, then what do you need for a space to that, and and it's something that should be discussed and hashed out and come to a decision. But of course, we're not even close to our government being able to do that right now. So there you go. So true. As with everything else, right? Decorrupt the government, or it's all left up.
There you go.
All right, we're going to let you go on with your evening.
All right, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.
All right. And I'm going to do a little closeout here. We got some super chats queued up. I'm going to do a quick look at a Substack article. Let me look at bringing that up. And but yeah, it's a thing. It's I think we don't want to get too caught up in like the idea of taxpayer dollars or exactly like, and it's really more like, what should our government be doing? Like, I think it can always be a mistake to get too caught up in how it's funded or whatnot. Like, there's that whole thing with there was a Substack article from a little while ago. In fact, here, let me bring that up because I can reach that this way. Here we go. So if you go to the old 11demands.org, and there's a Substack connected to 11 Demands, and I would encourage everyone, if this is of interest to you at all, to sign up to the 11 Demands Substack. And there's an easy link to get there from the 11demands.org page. And there was a recent one called, why you should avoid the phrase taxpayer dollars. And so some of this hit with the ballroom and that kind of thing hits on that. And we need to be, I would encourage people to consider this way of looking at taxes and what taxes are for. And what is out there with MMT and with what I think is the correct kind of thinking is that the purpose of taxes is not to pay for things. And this Substack article gets into that. The purpose of taxes is to cycle the money back out of the economy. So if you're saying, I don't want my taxes paying for this, or the billionaires are paying so much taxes, it's really almost a backward way of thinking it. The purpose of the taxes are to cycle the dollars back in. It is super important who gets taxed and how much they pay, but it needs to be looked at in that framework. Then when you look at what we're spending it on, what our government's doing, that should be it's an issue in and of itself. And is the government doing things for the billionaires and for the big corporations, or is our government doing things for the 99%? So that's what that article and this whole kind of thinking gets into. So if you want to see more on that, it's on there. It's what's the second most recent article, but actually the most recent article on the 11 Demands Substack plays off of actually the 11 Demands tweet that Sabrina showed during the show. But this is War is the Racket. These days, it's war and more war. And why? Digging down into the core reasons, it's always the same answer. More war means more huge profits for the billionaire-owned mega corporations. It can't get much clearer than on that chart above for the energy giant BP. And referring to this chart, and we see where Russia invades Ukraine, you get this huge boost in BP's profits because the oil goes up, and then later U.S. and Israel attack Iran, huge boost. It's really pretty clear. And this is, I think it's really important to always follow that money. And when you're looking at war, and why war is happening, why peace is so hard for our government to accomplish, it's because war makes money for that military-industrial complex and the billionaires that profit from it, who essentially own our government, have enormous outsized influence in our government, we would say. Of course, this is just one of many examples of how the billionaires profit from our war economy. They keep their evil grift going with money contributions into our government and politics, also known as legalized bribery. And it needs to be called out as called out for what it is straight up corruption. And that's a lot of what you're hearing a lot on this show on Sabby Sabs. It's corruption, and it needs to be just called out very directly and plainly. And people get that. It's not exactly like people are going to argue with you if you say, is our government corrupt? Or if you say our government is corrupt, they're going to say, oh yeah, it's corrupt. So what to do about it? Well, so you can start here. Demand peace. From 11 Demands for Real Democracy, the 11 Demands list, number 4 on that demands list is end the wars. Specifically, end support of all governments that engage in settler colonialism and genocide. Cut military budget by at least 20% every year. And, it's the number there is, it needs to be some significant number of doing actual military budget cuts. what we have happening right now is the opposite. You see our military budget growing by a large percentage every year. Disband NATO and reform imperialist foreign policies. That gets into just how our government operates. And, a lot of things connect into that, but it's all about interests. It's all about the government working for the interests of the billionaires and the military-industrial complex at top 0.1%, not working in our interests, in 99%. This would be a big one, and this is part of what 11 Demands is about is demanding big, not asking for compromises. This is a big demand. End sales of military weapons by U.S. companies. It's kind of almost hard to imagine that happening, but it would be perfectly legal for Congress to ban that kind of commerce. And, it would just be a big shift to say the least. But it's this kind of demand that could get us into a real kind of politics that gets us somewhere, that really would show whose side people are on. We just shouldn't be selling weapons. Making them and selling them. Replace military, and then one of the things that what this next one gets into, I'll interrupt myself. Then you'll hear, well, what about the jobs, right? You'll have huge job losses if you do that. Well, there's the concept of a just transition, and what you do with that is you replace the military jobs with federal green jobs. It could be infrastructure jobs. It could be STEM, science, engineering jobs. There's lots of jobs and work out there that could be done, but it's going to need an economy that's working for us and not for that top 0.1%. And getting into the nitty-gritty of some of this, you get into the laws that are on the books. Repeal the USA Patriot Act, the Espionage Act of 1917, the Authorization to Use Military Force Act of 2001, and similar laws. These really make the difference of the powers that the president has to make war. And there are real fixes to this, and it's up to us and our demands to be clear about what we're asking for and what these fixes are and look like. All our current problems have solutions. And MCDS, Money Corruption Demand Solutions, provides a framework to how we get to those. We all have a role to play. It's up to us to come together behind clear demands, call out the corruption, and bring on a better world. And we mentioned MCDS. I would encourage everyone to be familiar with it if this sounds good to you at all, and use it as that framework to analyze things. It's always the money, and it goes to the corruption. You need to be clear in your demands and the corruption. And when you have those demands and you're clear about it, the solutions flow right from that. And you can see what that looks like on the 11 Demands strategy and the 11 Demands list on the old 11demands.org webpage. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. Also, please do sign up to the Substack, so you get a little email when there's posts of that. It's not a lot of traffic, maybe once a week at that, and you can keep up with what's happening with 11 Demands, and we'll see where it goes. We're going to be working together on collaborating on that better world, and working on how we get there. So as always, you'll be seeing more to come on that. But stay tuned. Yeah, sign up to the Substack, please. All right. We've got, we have super chats in the queue. So I'm going to bring up some of those, and we'll see what we got. Thanks for and some of these go back, I should always say, back a couple of stories. So these earlier ones will reference the earlier stories. Thanks for the super chat from the Cash Bar. Trump will try to attack China and will take refuge in that ballroom. Gotcha. Yeah, it does certainly seem to have a bunker quality to it in there. And Trump's ready for his bunker. Shout out to Yina OK for this generous super chat who says, we're fortunate to have you, Sabby. Love the way you think. Thank you for your work. Well, thank you, and Sabby, thanks you for that one. Thanks for this super chat from More Smoky. Iran has friends, and they all have nukes that can reach the U.S. And it's a good thing, because Trump Trump, and I would really say a lot the same thing about Biden. He's not as bad, but they would. Trump would nuke Iran in a second if he thought he could get away with it in terms of what would happen next. And Biden would it would be not too far behind him. Really, it's a uniparty. These parties operate in the same interests. And we need something new. We need something different outside of that uniparty, that duopoly. Thanks for this one, Shockwave Truth, who said, Sabby, she said, BBC Persian in New York tells you all you need to know. Okay. And thanks for this one, More Smoky. Trump is now known as the king of chaos. I hear you. Chaos is definitely his brand and his MO. A lot of how they keep all this going. Shout out to L. Baron, who says, you got to vote with your dollars. I vote for Sabby. Thanks for all you do. And thank you. Thank everyone who supports. And thanks for the super chat, V. Chong, who says, let the dominoes fall. All right, and thanks for the super chat, Janine. Trump is a puppet for the demonic somethings that are behind this chaos. UFOs and unalived scientists. They want to end humanity. The veils are being lifted, and they are scared. We will come together. There you go. And thanks for this one, Mr. Marlon Wells. He says the petrodollar is dead. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, the whole economics of all this. Thanks for this one, V. Chong, who says, a huge W for the world. And thanks for this super chat, Nat the Cat Williams. Check out Hugo Culture. It's an old way of planting that needs no fertilizer and little water. All right, thanks for that one. All right. And moving through our queue here, we got a few built up. Thanks for this one, Jerry's Middle Finger, 1977, who says, we've got to stop depending on oil for so much in our lives. I ride my bike to work and around town, and my car stays parked most of the time unless I go out of town or it's snowing. It's healthier too. I hear you. And shout out to V. Kong, who says, Canada had the right idea in allowing BYD in. All right, and thanks for this one from Logically Dashing, from David, who says, CBS News, his story should be how to smile through a depression. There you go. And shout out to Marlon Wells. Elon Musk is the king of the corporate welfare tax. And yeah, that was a really important part in that segment about how the billionaires get there, and we do always need to be pointing that out as people who watch this show who kind of get it, that the billionaires aren't these genius job creators. They're almost invariably sons of rich men who had every advantage and are good at financials. They're good at turning $1 million into $10 million, into $100 million, into $1 billion. It's about rolling that finances. It's about extracting money from the public purse. Those federal dollars, they get tons of those. That's a big part of it. And it's important to realize that and make that part of our messaging of when we're talking about how things really operate. Thanks for this super chat, Warehouse Work with Kim. The U.S. needs a new party to represent the people. Republicans and Democrats are corrupt, paid off by donors. Yeah, we would agree with you there. New parties, also just candidates running as independent, is running, I would submit, on a clear set of demands. And they could go very far. Thanks for this one, Ritwise, who says, New Jersey inequalities between families, 662,500 to 20,000 median. Thank you for bringing it out. You got it. And appreciate this super chat from Ray, who says, thanks, Sabby. Thank you. And thanks for this super chat, Kenman, who quotes Kim Kardashian saying, "Get off your ass and work." Got you. Yep. And there's that narrative where the rich and famous are viewed as the good hardworking people, and anyone who's not up in that corrupt big club is viewed is characterized as lazy, is not working hard enough. And it's just not right. It's just not correct. And it's up to us, the people who do really work for a living, to find a way to organize and get that message out and correct that. We need a government that's not corrupt and works for the 99%. Thanks for this one, Shockwave Truth. Says, Sabby, not real money. Remember, it took him weeks to get the liquid cash for the Twitter purchase, talking about Elon Musk. This is a Western trick. It's more government credit than cash. Yeah, I would, basically agree. There's, these financializations and just pushing it all together. And a lot of times, so much of that money is vapor money. It's credit, it's debt. It's deals put together. I mean, it's at a certain point, all money is a construct, right? So I think it's good sometimes to step back and just keep that in mind. And we need to worry less about money and worry more about people, and worry more about how this world operates, and why we're not looking after our fellow human beings in the way we should and can. And thanks for this one, Logically Dashing, from David, who says, trickle-down economics was more trick than down. There you go. And people, I don't know, I wonder how much of our audience is young enough to not even remember and know about trickle-down economics. It goes back to Reagan age and in the Reagan era, and it was the idea that if we let the rich people and the big businesses get the vast majority of the money, let them get rich, let them have their way, then they would provide the jobs and the services. It would trickle down from their wealth to the rest of us, to the 99%. And this was like a real theory, that this was put out there as serious, economic theory. It was, the trickle down, and the idea was, oh, well, that's the best we can do, and you peasants should be happy to get these crumbs and these trickle downs that you're getting. What, those of us in the know who really know is that the working class, the 99%, are the real source of productivity and the wealth of this country, of this globe. And we need to have a political revolution, a political system that represents that, and that sends that wealth back to the people, and not just lets it be hoarded in the hands of a few at the top. And thanks for this one, Helpful Harm, who says, Bezos/Elon are not top billionaires, billionaires own real elite. All right, thanks for that. And also thanks for this one. Zorro Ranch is linked between nuclear sites, right? And thanks for the super chat, Nick Merkel. $5 says Lindsey Graham was one of the Zorro Ranch people, will say. It's an interesting theory. And thanks for the super sticker from Karina. Thanks for that one, and thanks for this one, Shockwave Truth, who says, or they tried to birth the Antichrist. This would explain the end times affection. And thanks for this super chat from Merch Public School, who says, we'll say the C word, or I will say, did COVID get in the way of this war in the first term? Yeah, that's a good question. Now we got one. I think it's just one out here on the Rumble that I'm just going to make appear here so I can read that one off with a few quick clicks. Here we go. Thanks for the rant on Rumble from Goo81, who quotes Alan Dershowitz, who's saying he only had one massage. The Dersh. I hear you. All right, that is just about going to do us today. Let me double check some of this stuff in the queue. That's good here. All right, I want to thank all of you for watching. You'll catch us next on Thursday for the live show. And let me just bring up what I need to bring up here. Here we go. So I appreciate all you watching tonight with the old 11 demands, which I'll point to there. There it is. The website. Do sign up for that Substack if you haven't already, so you can keep in touch there. But beyond that, I'll say have a good night. Keep up that fight. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.